What is up, everyone? What is up? Happy Monday, although Monday is the least favorite day of everybody, including Garfield, along with lasagna, as we've discussed. So I've been reading up a little bit about a few of the controversies going on the internet right now. I didn't know about this issue going on with Framework, apparently. I was reading from a couple of friends that they've more or less locked down the Discord and other communities due to some Omarchy controversy. I've never heard of this distribution until recently, to be honest. Oh, you finally bought Borderlands 4. It was 20% off on Steam. Nice. You have a Seagate drive out for repair, and the company is giving me the runaround. When you say Seagate hard drive is being repaired, do you mean Seagate's the one doing the repair under warranty, or you have a third party do it? But what is going on with Framework? Yeah, so I was peering into this a little bit, and I'm still getting all of my information together. But from what it seems right now is it has to do with DHH. Now, I've briefly touched on this guy in the past when I was doing some content talking about the WordPress drama with Matt Mullenweg, and DHH weighed in there. I did not know how controversial this guy is, and for a little bit of context, if you don't know who DHH is, he's apparently the guy behind Ruby on Rails. So Ruby on Rails is a technology that is used by a lot of people to host a lot of different server projects, things like that. But nonetheless, if you actually go through DHH's own blog, he's got some, shall we say, controversial viewpoints. Now, DHH, his name is David Hennemeyer Hansen, if I recall. Yeah, that's what it comes up to. Yeah, he definitely has contributed to a lot of open source and technology companies overall, but he was also the creator of Omarchy. So Omarchy is basically a Linux distribution that is, well, as he says, a beautiful modern Linux-based operating system built on terminal interfaces and web apps. It's designed around keyboard-first ergonomics, so it's incredibly fast to use, and it looks like nothing you've seen on Mac or Windows. It's brand new, but already been adopted by thousands of pioneers ready for a new way of computing. So the issue is not so much a criticism of Omarchy, because let me make it very clear. I'm sure Omarchy is a great distribution in and of itself and for what it does. The issue that people are having is Framework becoming incredibly close to Omarchy, and people have been calling it out because of the creator DHH being so controversial. Yeah, so that's where it comes down to. And Framework is given the response of, well, they're trying to, support all kinds of open source and have a big tent party, basically. But the problem is with that idea is you can totally embrace and endorse a ton of open source projects without picking the controversial ones. There's a few projects out there that when you peel the lid back, you're like, I don't like the people behind this project and what they're doing for one way or another. And, I've gone on record saying I don't like how people are over-politicizing different softwares and stuff too, but it's one of those things when people start having their personal views well known, and they are controversial and in many ways toxic themselves, that becomes a problem. Look, I'm gonna have, personal views that not everyone's going to agree with. That's fine. That's everyone's right. We're all independent. We're all free individuals that are capable of having free thought independent of each other, and we're not always going to necessarily agree with each other, and that's fine. But there are some things that you kind of, look at some of their views, and you're like, you get what I'm saying? It sounds like a nothing burger, honestly. It's not really as much of a nothing burger as you think. The issue is Omarchy is this operating system that, let let me put it this way. I've not even really heard of it. But the fact that Framework is buddying up so much with this one when there's a lot of other distributions out there, that their main controversy is, oh, we like Rust more than C. Rather than, oh, we're gonna go really deep into, like, believing, like, people have talked about eugenics. Like, that's not hyperbole there. There's a line where it's not a nothing burger, and you're like, I can understand where you're wanting to embrace open source, but can you embrace a less, open source? Like, I miss the days when open source used to have operating systems that had, coding languages that were apparently derived or given prophetically from God in the name of Holy See, Temple OS. Like that, I miss those kind of controversial days where you look at the dude and yeah, he said some, wacky things too, but he was mentally ill. Like straight up mentally ill, that when you actually peel back that layer, like, oh, this is a really sad story here. But of a man that was really a genius, even though he was mentally ill. But yeah, it's apparently become enough of an issue that Framework has pretty much locked down their Discord community, from what I've been told by several people. The volunteer moderation is really not. Is it an AI-focused OS? No. It's not. It's an Arch OS with some customizations and tweaking. That's what's really weird here. Like, if Framework would have had less controversy around it if they just said, yeah, we like canonical in Ubuntu. Like, them saying, like, we want you to use, shoot, what's that Rust-based operating system that isn't Linux? Crap, what's it called? Rust-based OS. Redux OS. That, like, if you go out saying, no, Pop OS is looking at Cosmic Desktop environment being written in Rust. Redux is looking at the entire operating system being written in Rust. But I will say this. If I remember, there's one of the main developers behind Redux, or one of the developers in this, is also the person that works over at System 76. I can't remember his name. We've chatted a little bit on Mastodon, and I think even on Twitter back when I was on there, because you can definitely see like GUI tools supported via Cosmic programs and things like that. We should probably play with this sometime. I'm going to download this while we're at it. Let's see. Latest release. Because this is an entirely Rust-based operating system, so I want a virtual machine image. No, I don't need to send that to VirusTotal, it's too big. But, yeah, so, like, straight up, Framework coming out and saying Linux should incorporate more Rust would have been less controversial than picking Omarchy as this operating system they suddenly are, like, so cozy with. Like, here. There was an article I was reading earlier. I'm building my own home media server. Now, how would I connect when I'm not home? You can do that one of many ways. There's TwinGate, there's Tailscale, you have your old-fashioned traditional VPN. There's quite a few different ways to do this, but for probably the easiest ways to set up, I would look at TwinGate or Tailscale. Okay, yeah, this was, I think, the article I was reading over here. Yep, this was the actual article I was reading while I was waiting for my dog. By the way, my oldest dog has a tumor. I just picked him up today to, get a biopsy and see if it's cancerous or benign. So that's gonna be an ordeal. I gotta wait for a few days to find out if my oldest boy Ari is gonna be fine. So yeah, he's only 7. He's gonna be 8 in like next year. So he's still a young dog. In fact, where's my dickhead? Yo, Ari! Ari, hey. There you are, you little dickhead. I got one boy. Your car got fucked up. Would you chill? So yeah, the brown dog over here, that is Ari. That's the one that had to go to the vet. Well, they both went to the vet. He just had to go get his flu shots and stuff. And then this little guy over here, he's just not been himself. He's a good boy. He's a good boy. He's a good boy. Alright, dickheads. Chev. Lamala. Good boy. Chev. We go through this every time, dickhead. Chev. Sit. Chev. Look, I'm not Hassan Piker. I'm not gonna give you a shot collar. Sit. Chev. But yeah, before we get into that article, these are my dogs. So Ari over here was my first dog that I actually ever got. Like, my first ever dog that I chose myself. Not a family dog or anything. So, yeah. We gotta keep you around for like another 10 years or so, dickhead. And then this little guy over here is just about to be 2. And I got him from a friend as payment. He owed me a couple $100, and he happened to have a litter of puppies, and I said, just give me one of the puppies and we'll call it even. But yeah, these are good dogs. Have you seen the paper on optical mouse sensor as microphone using LLMs to denoise and transcribe up to 80% accuracy? Interesting. I haven't seen that. Yeah, I hope my dog's gonna be okay too. But we shall see. I just had to pay a few $100 just for testing. For Ari, hopefully he'll be fine. And I'm hoping it's just benign. And then we'll deal with it from there. So far, the tumor doesn't seem to be impeding his movement, they say. You owe me money, so give me a child. Wild amount of money you got there, man. It's only a couple $100 he owed me. Alright, but anyway, let's go into this breakdown of the article that I read a little bit earlier. So, Framework, the laptop manufacturer, embroiled in controversy as of now. The Discord server is on lockdown because the volunteer moderation team has gone on hiatus, and the Framework forum post about the controversy has been gaining unsightly amounts of steam from people disappointed at actions taken by Framework. I love how live Framework community reaction with a, what is that, a raven with a knife? Murder crow. A little context about my involvement. This person's been in the Framework community since 2022, doing third-party hardware development and helping others projects in the same vein. I've also been using a Framework since then, recently upgraded to an AMD board from the 11th gen offering. In general, I've been an advocate for Framework's laptop and mission in both professional, yada yada yada. And don't get me wrong, I've always wanted to tinker with Framework devices. I just haven't really seen the need for me to do that. I've been more into System 76, Tuxedo Computers, Nova Custom, Purism. I wanted to give attention to some of the lesser known brands that were heavily Linux focused. I hear good things about Framework, but I remember when I played with a friend of mine's many years ago, I just was not impressed with the build quality because it felt like it flexed a lot, but it feels like they have improved quite a bit of that since. Moving on. I had to shutter my general electronics work and frame party third work. Okay. Recently, I've noticed consistent support for Omarchy on Framework social media, specifically Twitter, as forwarded into the Framework Discord channel, #social media, which is one of the few Framework Discord channels I follow. I didn't know what Omarchy was, so I thought it was yet another user-friendly distribution and paid it no mind. And that's what I honestly thought when I was, like, seeing Omarchy and everything. And then when I started looking into this myself, I'm like, there's a little bit more to this than the average thing. Like, if this were just another, like, Arch Linux distro from any other person, I'd be like, okay, it's another Arch distro. Okay, cool. These are just other people that need to touch grass. But this is a person behind it that needs to touch grass more than any. Omarchy is this is a Windows key little joke over there. That was apparently on their Twitter post. As Framework social media support for Omarchy ramped up, I started seeing Omarchy mentioned in negative light, both on the Framework Discord server and on unrelated servers, brought up often in connection to Framework. Given that I've been vocally pro-Framework, I've also had multiple people derisively mention the Framework's affinity to Omarchy to me personally. Surprised, I eventually started asking people and looking up myself, what's the lowdown on Omarchy? And was puzzled to learn that Omarchy is more or less a set of dot file scripts for Arch, the main and biggest problem about them being the loud and visible by DHH label. And that's the primary issue that I've seen around it, is not really the project itself. The project itself seems to be very solid. It happens to be, well, again, going back to David Hennemeyer Hansen. Now, I only knew this as the guy that, made Ruby on Rails, and I, paid more attention to him with the Matt Mullenweg drama that happened a while ago, which I have a few YouTube videos I went into until I was like, this is getting to be too much of a petty drama. I'm moving on, and I never really looked much into his own posts beyond that post about open source and everything there, where I cited it. But I should have looked more into him and been like, yeah, but anyway. Now, I've also heard that DHH is a despicable person, but people say all sorts of stuff. You always got to check for yourself. And that's exactly what I was saying as well, is I didn't know about him much, and I didn't really care to. But now, as part of this, I wanted to look more into why people have the opinions they did, and then I started going like, yeah, I can kind of see where you got with that. The problem was, I've already heard about DHH before, and I did check back then. Okay, so, y'all are more than welcome to double check everything here. This was just a good summation post rather than me redoing my own thing. But yeah, I read this post along with a few others, and this one seemed to be one of the most concise and straightforward to the points on what the issue is going on with the Framework drama. So, without mincing words, DHH is prolific at espousing white nationalist and eugenist views with a pseudo-intellectual slant while trying to pretend he's doing something else. There's been no shortage of posts where his views and behavior are either detailed or mentioned as playing a major role in events. Like, they linked all this. No, we're gonna... Why can't you just let me just, reject. Yeah, agree. Okay. So, they've cited a few pieces over here. Destabilizing the open source community, software community. Mind you, I've learned about him from an unrelated incident in my social feed months before, because his views seem to have been splitting the Ruby community apart that badly too. Yeah. So apparently he was pretty divisive in the Ruby community. Now, I'm not a Ruby dev, but yeah, there was a few things that were mentioned in here that, like, raised an eyebrow to me. And this is where the Framework controversy is really coming around. And this isn't, like, hey, they just happen to be a Republican and we don't like them kind of thing, where it's like, okay, we can agree to disagree and move on. This is like, you are way to the extreme, the same way as I would look at anyone that's, on any extreme, whether it be right or left, and I'd be like, get a little bit out there, bud. Do I need to download Tailscale on every device I want to see my media server on? I believe you do. I believe it's more of a zero trust network access client, but you will need it on the, I haven't done Tailscale much myself, so chat, you can correct me on there. I know more of TwinGate, where TwinGate is your typical zero trust network access. I install a connector on one of the devices in the network, and then from there, you then make sure it has a network device to do all that. Okay, you do have to install it on everyone? Okay, I haven't played with Tailscale. I've been more of a TwinGate guy and a Zscaler guy, so I know more from that point of view. Thank you, chat. Okay, but anyway, this is a great quote here. Being opinionated isn't a virtue, and it's easy to fall into hubris, as DHH's posting demonstrates. And they even say, an opinionated Arch Linux and Hyperlin setup guide by DHH for users seeking a customized experience. I don't really want your operating system manual to set things up to be really opinionated. I want it to be fact-based. You can have opinions like, a personal opinion like, XFCE is better than LXDE, or GNOME is better than, Cosmic, though I do like Cosmic better. Those are opinions, and everyone has validity in their opinions. Okay, Tailscale is just a split tunnel VPN, more or less. Okay, that's a good way to put it. I want to get something out of the way first. DHH's writings is not just espousing white nationalism, transphobia, or eugenics, although from what I and others have seen, it's doing all of those things. I did go through some of his posts, and yeah, it was like one of those, like, really? You're gonna put that stuff on the internet? To my eye as a writer, it also appears to be written for a gullible audience. And that's the thing is, I noticed that a lot of people, and this isn't just in the tech field, but you notice like the Joe Rogans and stuff like that, they kind of are in the grifting mindset where they're writing things for people that are more able to be influenced. And they're just grifting so that they can sell you a product. Like Alex Jones did this, Joe Rogan's done this. There's been people, on all sides of, the political spectrum or even non-political side of things that have done this and taken advantage of people's desire to go one way or another. I decided to check the quality of his writing on matters like ADHD. Yeah, so like there's even posts in Framework. Like it says straight out like that. And you have to understand, people like this sounds like much of a nothing burger. Here's the thing. I don't think people really understand when you have a brand that has some international recognition, just how much of an outlier American views happen to be on the international space. I'm just being honest with you. And it's very easy to tell how isolated a lot of Americans' views are from how the international community as a whole is, because of the ways they go about viewing the rest of the world. It's the same thing as you find a lot of people overseas that have never left their respective country, and they have the same problems there, but America is very, very Amerocentric with a lot of things, and it's to our detriment. Oh, Vampire, what's up? We're talking about the framework controversy with Omarchy Linux that I've been looking into for the past couple of days. And there was a great, write-up here from Premiere.github.io. I'm going to drop this in the chat for all of you that want to read this article, by the way. That should be in the chat for all of you. Yeah, so I decided to check the quality of his writing on matters like ADHD, a topic I've recently intensively looked into. The best way I could describe it is schlock from a high horse... This is an interesting way to put it. Schlock from a high horse viewpoint that hits ideological points without attempting to engage with reality as scientifically observed diagnostic standards as applied by medical professionals, or the large variety of tangible markers that led to the science community to designate ADHD as a specific condition with specific symptoms. It boils down to Quote, ADHD gives me the ick, and those few lines from the DSM-5 seem sus to me. Differential diagnosis? Brain chemistry differences? I don't know. Stop taking drugs, LMAO. They're bad. Okay. Now, before TikTok goes and, penalizes me, I'm quoting something here, okay? In modern terms, DHH is a yapper parroting topics currently in circulation by a far-right media machine, and I say this because as much as his ADHD views are BS, they are not novel. I've heard them before as far as 20 years ago for the ADHD one, and it just happens that it's getting reheated and served as of semi-recently. And that, I think, partly has to do with, RFK Jr., I think is what's his name, the, head of the, FDA, that dude that literally has talked basically more or less about how he wants to make camps for people that are ADHD or autistic, the neurodiverse community. Like, no joke. Go look that up. He's basically talked about that. Being a yapper isn't a crime, neither is saying lots of BS, but it does tend to earn you large amounts of derision. Given the radical stances DHH outwardly takes, with no care in the world, this is exactly what's happening. So, you can look on the Discord. People have been, downvoting a lot of these posts. So, look at this, okay? This post here, not mentioning Omarchy at all. Ubuntu, or Fedora, or NixOS, Mint, FreeBSD, Bazite, Arch, Linux, Debian, Catchy, or anything else being forced to log into a Microsoft account. Thumbs up, BSD, hearts. But then the second they mention Omarchy, you get more interaction with people giving a negative view. If you know a little bit about PR in the social media space, you might note that, right out of the gate, a project by a vocal white nationalist known for splitting communities by their mere presence is not a great highlight choice for an overtly non-left-right political company like Framework. Does it get worse from here? Sadly, it does. And that's basically hitting the nail on the head there, is I don't have an issue with Omarchy in itself. It's the fact that it's centered around DHH. Sure, he made a great product. But, that's problematic when a lot of people just want to use their software and then they look at people's personal opinions. Look, even if you look at Richard Stallman, yes, he did some great works, but he gets off the rails sometimes with his writings on his blog, and he got called out for it a few times, I believe. There's been an outstanding amount of highlights, Omarchy highlights on Framework social media within the past month, if not longer. No other distribution seems to have received similar amounts of social media support, and for all its obscurity, Omarchy was all the more noticeable. For a quick check, the Omarchy DHH links were extremely visible. And that's one of the things to call out, is I never heard of Omarchy until the Framework controversy. And if I'm learning about your operating system through the controversy of another company, that should tell you something. People are maybe having opinions about Redux OS because it's a completely Rust-based operating system. But that's because that's a technical controversy. That's not a controversy of the creator. That's a controversy of there's this overwhelming discussion between C and Rust right now, and there's been a lot of pushback about putting Rust into the Linux kernel, but that's a technical discussion. You can only separate the art from the artist to a certain extent. That is a beautiful way to put it, Sofix. Sofix? Either way. Naturally, it does not help that Omarchy is very visibly branded by DHH, and that ultimately is the problem. If Omarchy was just an operating system, didn't, prominently say by DHH for everything, it probably wouldn't have been as much of a controversy, kind of like how Ruby on Rails is still used by a lot of people, even though DHH is one of the biggest people behind it. But yeah. Of course, there's a battle between C and Rust. Salt water corrodes metal. But it also doesn't help that the DHH Ruby community drama got big enough to a point where you could learn about it through ambient, non-political feed scrolling, just like I did. From a quick social media comment check, Framework social media accounts have received replies talking about DHH being a liability under their Omarchy posts, but they don't appear to have reacted in any way. And that ultimately is where the big problem is with Framework's controversy, is because they seem to be a little bit tone deaf about the people's concerns about Omarchy. It's a minor operating system in the grand scheme of things I never heard about before this controversy. And then their approach was, as we'll get to in a little bit, was kind of this agnostic post, and they didn't realize, like, read the temperature in the room. It's not that popular. People don't care for the developer behind it. And you're just going to put yourself in a bad light here in terms of PR and damaging a lot of the goodwill that you've been doing in the Linux open source and right to repair spaces. Like, do not get me wrong. I don't own any Framework devices. I have not really planned to go get any, primarily because all the devices I buy is out of my own wallet. I don't have the luxury of companies sending me devices all the time, like some bigger content creators. So when I buy devices, I'm very selective about the brands that I use. I have nothing against Framework. Let me make that very clear. If I happen to get a Framework, great. I have some friends that love it. They think it's great. Power to them. But for people like me that don't have Framework, this kind of makes me side-eye it, because, like, I like System 76, because they are an open source company that produces open source software. They make the Cosmic Desktop environment, and they're based here in the USA, so I want to support, when possible, good American businesses that are local to me that do the things I believe in. And that's very similar to my approach with Purism. But then also, I'm not afraid to go overseas like I did with Tuxedo Computers and get my most recent laptop, because I like the way they do things too, and support how they're going about doing things. And Nova Custom is next on that list as well. But then Framework is just kind of like turning off a lot of people that aren't really into politics, but are probably more in the tech scene and are more aware of the Ruby on Rails drama that has happened by DHH, and you're just talking about this very obscure operating system no one really uses. Like, if you're talking about the overall Linux community, Arch users are not the largest part of the Linux community, but they are one of the most vocal. Let me make that very clear. So you're talking about a very small part of a very small community and giving an outweighed amount of visibility to this project that people are just like, that guy that is behind it is kind of an issue. Continuing on, at some point recently, the Framework DHH connection has started boiling over on social media and became a discourse topic, together with Hyperland. Apart from general social media backlash, it boiled over into a Framework forum thread called Framework Supporting Far-Right Racists. Blunt, but I find it hard to dispute the sentiment. Since I didn't mention Hyperland before, here's a bit about it. Already over a month ago, Omarchy posting in Framework Discord elicited a reaction colloquially known as "you posted cringe." Oh, that's what that meant? Okay. So this is like a month ago more than a month ago. This is like, what, 2 months ago at this point? Okay, so, this is why I picked out this post, is they condensed a lot of the information that I would have had to piece together from different things in one place for us to go through together, so you can understand this Framework controversy. The Hyperland part in short. Hyperland's main developer and face, Vaxery, got under fire some time ago for his and others' posts in Hyperland community targeting trans people and other minority groups. Generally, the Hyperland community's low social standards have been a sticking point for Hyperland users for a while, even before the controversy. Just like with Framework, the controversy point was reached after a long-standing community member dissatisfaction finally boiled over. As of this time, when the Framework forum thread got published, a member of an affected group who did her own research had asked around and found that apparently Vaxry had gotten way better at keeping Hyperland community clean from harassment and has led to creating a better no-nonsense atmosphere for vulnerable people since then. From her assessment, Hyperland's community has improved significantly and is on a positive trend. I wonder if Linus Sebastian could be used to exert pressure on Framework to have them move away from the operating system. We'll touch on Linus Tech Tips and Linus Sebastian in a little bit, because I also wanted to say some things about that, because I watched another video that was kind of interesting, talking about how he's been losing relevance and things, and we'll save that for the next train of thought before I lose that. Thank you, ADHD Meds, for helping me stay on track. From her assessment, Hyperland's community has improved significantly and is, quote, on a positive trend, end quote. Hyperland's community is on a positive trend. I wouldn't consider them, like, shiny beacon good or anything just yet, but they've made positive changes that are uncommon to see. I still have question marks personally and some previous incidents that are really just not good, TM, but I'm willing to at least offer them the benefit of the doubt, given how things are, seem to be nowadays. It's a kind of watch these guys for 5 years deal. I trust her words on that, and if this is true, I don't think Framework's Hyperland sponsorship is anywhere as big of a deal as support for Omarchy DHS, and I have to agree with that sentiment there. I haven't really dealt with Hyperland much, but I was hearing the same things from a lot of the people there. You know, and there's another post there from Senhara talking about the thing we talked about. That said, due to factors like negative bias, I can't put in good faith blame people for being disappointed by a Hyperland sponsorship, especially if last they've heard of Hyperland is the community controversy, even if I personally wouldn't go that far with the information that I have now. I also can't exactly blame people for not wanting if they have... I also can't exactly blame people for not wanting if they have been personally affected by the situation, or simply if they give it more weight than I do, given how outstanding of a community management failure this was compared to standards upheld by other open source software communities. That felt like a long sentence right there. I feel like there could have been more punctuation in that sentence, but moving on. From what I've seen, the main problem people have is the DHH Omarchy support, and I'd have to agree with that sentiment. With Hyperland support taking the back seat in terms of severity, this reflects thoroughly in the thread, and even in the OP, way more text is dedicated to DHH, so I don't think that Hyperland support warrants more explanation than this. Most of my post is written concerning Omarchy DHH support specifically. Yeah, so they have a bunch more that goes into this as well. Now, this is where Framework really started, in my opinion, to F up their PR. Okay? So after all this, controversy was brought to light about Omarchy, and, again, it's a relatively small operating system in a small community known as Arch in Linux, which there's, this overall thing. The Framework CEO response had centered around on building a big tent, and it was an underwhelming tone. It was definitely something that he should have, looked with his PR team and kind of said, look, this is such a small operating system that no one really knew of until this controversy. Maybe we should back off from it. Look, you say Bazite, you say Fedora, you say Ubuntu, you say Pop! OS, OpenSUSE, Catchy, none of these have anywhere near the level of controversy that this has brought about. I opened YouTube and see what you were talking about. Oh, with what? What you talking about, Vampire? So basically the statement was, we support open source software and hardware and partner with developers and maintainers across the ecosystem. We deliberately create a big tent because we want open source software to win. We don't partner based on individuals or organizations' beliefs, values, or political stances outside of their alignment with us on increasing the adoption of open source software. We've sent out large quantities of hardware to folks at Fedora, Bluefin, Bazite, NixOS, Arch Linux, Linux Mint, Omarchy, and many other distributions and have sponsored either the organizations directly or events with Linux Foundation, LVFS, NixOS Debian, KDE, Hyperland, and others. Within the team itself, personal distro and OS preferences span basically every Linux distro you can imagine along with FreeBSD. I personally am getting machines with Fedora for machine learning, Bazite for gaming, Omarchy general productivity, and Windows 11 when I have to. I definitely understand that not everyone will agree with taking a Big Ten approach, but we want to be transparent that bringing in and enabling every organization and community that we can across the Linux ecosystem is a deliberate choice. That felt like a really tone-deaf response in the framework controversy there. Because again, it's an operating system that isn't well known, and the only reason that people know it is by controversy of the creator around it. This is one of those, like, what's the temperature kind of moments. And you should have seen what the temperature of the room was, dude. Oh, what video? Also, but the second to last I've heard of, SUSE. OpenSUSE is, like, more common over in Europe. I've used it a little bit in the past. I haven't used it all that much. What was the post that you were, sharing there, Vampire? Hold on. Which is the YouTube you're doing? No, I pulled up the link. I'm just trying to, like, pull it up myself to see. Oh, yeah. The Gardner Bryant video. I watched that as well. But I wanted to do my own analysis rather than just get fed points to me. And this seems to be, when I was reading through it, the best compilation of all the other things that I saw, so I didn't have to piece together 20 different, things and be like, this is, what was going on over here. Then you piece it over here, and then start looking like the dude from Sunny in Philadelphia that has, like, the whole, like, board behind him with all the string, and, like, that crazy meme. I didn't want to look like that dude. So that's why I went with this one article. Oh, sweet. I got it. Thank you. That was dinner. This is the only distro that took me from dusty machine to usable productivity device in less than 30 minutes. Which one? Okay, so. Yeah, Gardner Bryant used to be the Linux gamer. And, I mean, he does okay stuff, don't get me wrong. But just like, every human, he has some things that I kind of disagree with. He and I got into an argument at one point. I forgot on which medium. I think it was maybe on Twitter, maybe Mastodon. Like, we're talking that many years ago, because I haven't been on Twitter in a while. Where, he got upset with me because I responded to something of his, and I basically said, well, if people had just RTFM, they'd understand how this particular thing... I forget what the exact argument was, but I remember it centered around RTFM. Read the frickin' manual. And he's like, well, that's a very toxic thing to do, and we don't really... if you've been in my community long enough, we don't really talk about that. And I'm like, yeah, but here's the reality. That's kind of how it works professionally. You kind of do have to read the frickin' manual a lot of times and understand how things are supposed to be used in certain use cases. Very minor disagreement in the grand scheme of things, okay? It's one of those, we can agree to disagree and move on with our live kind of discussions and then go on from there. But that just points out, look, overall he does good things. I can agree to disagree. I think that's like the only thing we've really disagreed on. I mean, but anyway, moving on. But yeah, as they said, first one I can point out personally is the sheer amount of PR and otherwise support given to highlighting Omarchy. I'm personally certain that the situation would have been 100% avoided if the framework social media simply mentioned Omarchy less. Omarchy and DHH as well are well understood to be pretty inseparable. As illustrated, you simply need to look up Omarchy online. And that, I think, is the issue at there. If they had just made like one or two posts in passing and been like, yeah, here's Omarchy on a framework laptop, and then moved on. But it's the disproportionate amount of posting about Omarchy for how popular the operating system actually is, knowing framework doesn't have a direct stake in Omarchy. You see what I'm saying? Like, this is an operating system that the Linux community is still not well known and is primarily getting more popularity through this controversy with Framework right now. That's how I learned about it. That's how a few dozen of my friends that I was talking to about it learned about it as well. That's not a good thing that people are learning about that way. I don't use the manual to learn on my own, but if something doesn't work, then I open the manual to see what I did wrong. You must be a man. That's how we operate. Manuals? We don't need no manuals over here. Goes to ER, working on car. Oh, I should have read the manual for safety procedures. Remember, safety third. That's me with AutoCAD right now. Yeah. Okay, compared to other Linux distributions Framework supports, this is outstanding, and Omarchy's otherwise notable obscurity helped Framework shine an otherwise unprecedented light on it. With DHH having been mentioned so widely in tech news, the issue boiling over was a matter of time. Another one is heightened political tensions in the Western world, doubly so in the English-speaking media, and growing polarization against far-right figures both in political world and in tech. Framework as a company doesn't map onto the left-right spectrum. Right to repair generally does not. I'd argue that this is to everyone's benefit, given this environment outwardly supporting Omarchy by DHH, aka projects by far-right figure, who's already highly controversial in tech communities and in the spotlight as of recent, is objectively a misstep and a waste of goodwill. Unless Framework aimed to get this sort of publicity, that is, which I doubt. And that's primarily where the controversy is primarily being around, is you have this guy that has views that are really controversial by a company that's not seen as politically aligned with anything, but by virtue of aligning themselves to something that is an obscure project by a person that has really controversial views, that makes you look really bad in a neutral sense. Again, dozens of other operating systems, if they had just made the post, hey, here's Omarchy running on Framework. Anyway, moving on. But they made quite a few posts about it, and nobody really knew about Omarchy beforehand, and it could have been one of those obscurity things where people just like, oh, that's a thing, and then a few people just get upset and move on. Then there's the Nazi bar problem. Any skilled online community moderators will tell you far-right people engage in a variety of socially underhanded tactics to gain a foothold in online communities, and it can be costly to root them out. The internet is old enough that a great deal of people have seen this happen to online communities, ruining or splitting them. So if you don't know what this is referring to, the funny mustache man bar problem. More or less, I've heard various iterations of the story, but like, you have a punker sitting down at a bar, and then another guy comes by, and then the barkeep immediately throws that new guy out, and he's like, well, he seemed pretty chill. Well, no, that dude is a funny mustache man aficionado. If you allow one of them in, they bring their buddies, and then before you know it, we're associated as that. That's basically the statement that he's bringing there with that, if you're not familiar with that statement. And yeah, again, people are, this is software, we should focus on the tech and everything. But the problem is there are some developers that really can't separate themselves from their controversial opinions to their tech work. You can only separate the artist from the art from the artist so much. I mean, at a certain point, let's say you bought a piece of art from the funny mustache man back in his, trying to go to art school kind of days. Does that not make you an aficionado of the funny mustache man by owning his artwork, even if you just like the art that he designed? I'm not answering that question for you. I'm just posing that question for you. Managers, make this plugin quickly. Me, how long do I have to read the manuals managers make now? What do I feel like Framework is getting forced to do this because that person is the boss's family member? I feel like there is a monetary incentive behind there because DHH, from my understanding, is still a wealthy individual, and they are, of course, trying to, cater to getting money. Open source is, of course, not a very lucrative part of the business. And the few that are usually tied to like IBM, Microsoft, Canonical. IBM owns Red Hat. Canonical is, tying with Microsoft. And a bunch of these other ones. So, yeah, I do believe that there's a trying to appease the guys so that we can get blessed with more money and investment kind of attitude. So why does this matter? A notable far-right presence inevitably results in the community becoming repulsive to a large part of its core audience. It happened on Usenet, DC++, IRC, Skype, PHBB forums, Twitter, Reddit, Discord, and it will keep happening in the future. I'd argue some points on that argument over there, because I do believe that every community, whether you agree with their statements or not, does have a right to say the things they want, even if I don't agree with them. But I will not disagree with this association of certain political views does sour certain things. Oh god, Usenet's so bad. Yeah, Usenet used to be great. I'm here at my effing limit. The face when you've seen this happen before. This is why you won't see any socially recognizable degree of far-right thought expressed openly in any of the big open-source communities. Far-right people are present, but they know their views are to be sufficiently repulsive to people around them, and people know to clamp down instinctively on this and other antisocial behaviors. It's not just a great existence for people who need to hide their views, sure, and it can lead to further polarization in some cases, but you genuinely can't blame other people for being cautious or verifiably corrosive behavior. It's a mechanism of social change that does verifiably work a lot of the time, and it helps people focus on the tech rather than the antisocial nonsense someone decided to start talking about. And parentheses are saying, if you're wondering, yeah, that's just the thing that happens, which is how you have projects like Ex Libre started by people whose previous claim to fame is getting themselves chewed out by Linus Torvalds because they posted anti-vaccine rants unprompted by the Linux kernel man. I didn't know that part of it. Wait, what? Was that how... I did not know that. I forgot that part entirely. Yeah, this has no place to be in the Linux kernel mailing list. But you see, this is the kind of thing we're talking about that is an issue where, yeah, anyway. And I think this also goes back to the point that I said that a lot of Americans that tend to have a lot of the far-right points of view don't realize just how far-right they are compared to the rest of the world. Most of the world, being Europe and a lot of the, Western world, shall we say, tends to be like center-left. Whereas America is center-right. So it's really weird when I have to explain to people, the version of liberal inside of in like the UK, for example, is actually further left than Democrats. And the version of conservative is actually closer to Democrats in the US. I'm oversimplifying things, but that's how. What was it posted in? Oh, the people of the Ex Libre community originally got kicked off of the Linux kernel mailing list for talking about COVID-19 vaccines in the Linux kernel mailing list. Talking about the Linux kernel and its developments. I didn't know that's how Ex Libre got, its start and got kicked off for that reason. Yeah, on the mailing list, we're like far right. No, we're not as far right as people think. We are center right, which is far right to a lot of the world. But again, if you look at the majority of actual people in the United States, it's more center-right. And again, it goes back to the point of what I said before, like Arch users happen to be the most vocal out of the Linux community. They're not by no means the majority. In the same way that MAGA is overwhelmingly vocal, but they are by no means the majority. Compared to like Germany, Netherlands, etc., we are prudes. Well, yeah, but again, they're center-left, we're center-right. We're not that far off. If you look at the grand scheme on the Nolan chart, we're not too far away. It's just, like, you have this full spectrum over here. It's like the US is here, and Europe is there. Like, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that far different. But because they're that far off to one, it looks like far right to Europe and far left to the US when you look at Europe. Okay, so anyway, continuing on. The Big Tent claim, overlaid with Framework's outstanding promotion of Omarchy, looks cartoonishly reckless in this light. People don't want this for Framework, and they're cautious to distance themselves because they've seen other projects claim to be a, quote, big tent, end quote, only for the tent to catch on fire, melt, and shrink under everyone's feet because nobody used a fire extinguisher when it was nearly enough to do so. That is a great way to put it. Because if you look at the American political system, that's exactly what happened on the Democrats and Republican side. You had, like, for example, I've said this before, I'm by no means a Bernie bro, but I definitely like Bernie Sanders more than Hillary Clinton. Democrats lit their own tent on fire and have been trying to rebuild their tent ever since because a lot of the sane people kind of just, like, left and said, they're, you know, ruining the whole thing. In the same way that MAGA sent the tent on fire for Republicans, and a lot of the, you know, the reasonable Republicans are just kind of getting ousted by these MAGA people. Or just like saying, I'm not dealing with this anymore, I'm out. I'm just way less anxious in a European city than a US one. It depends on which city in both arguments. Look, I'm gonna tell you this. There are some cities in France I would feel anxious in. And before you go, oh, are you talking about those certain neighborhoods in Paris? No, there are other neighborhoods too. Now, maybe Portugal in a plurality would probably not be as, you know, questioning. I think most of the world like Bernie. Even my considerably conservative father invited me. Left or right, still serve the rich and only the rich. It's a totally different thing, because if you look at, like, the Democrats that actually cater to Hillary Clinton, those are the, we want to support the rich and status quo people. It's not really a left versus right issue. It's a elitist versus the middle class, shall we say, argument. I don't know what the better term is than middle class, but you get my point. It's an us versus them. It's a top versus bottom. There we go. Top versus bottom, not a left versus right. And the funny thing is, when you talk to a lot of people, regardless of spectrum, they'll actually agree with that statement, just in different ways. It's top versus bottom, not left versus right. Better than MAGA, but bro, they're trying their hardest to lose. Yeah, pretty much. They're trying to think of it as a game of golf where the lower the score, the better. That's how Democrats' strategy seems to have been for the past few years. And mind you, before anyone's like, oh, you're a Democrat, I'm neither a Democrat nor a Republican. They all suck for different reasons. And I don't have allegiance to any particular party. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I voted independent, I voted Democrat, I voted Republican, I voted Libertarian, I voted Green. At various different levels of government. Because I look at each candidate and I'm like, I like you. Are you going to probably win? Maybe not. But you're going to get my vote because I like you. And I think more people need to think that way. Especially as we push more towards ranked choice voting. But that's a whole other argument. Anyway. So you can see, I wanted to provide an update to everyone on the status of the Discord server. I have shared Framework stance in regards to Omarchy and Hyperland here. Hashtag Framework discussion. Considering this, moderators have taken a hiatus, and I totally honor and respect their decision to do so. The moderators took a hiatus because of your Omarchy and Hyperland discussion on Framework. Our Discord has thrived thanks to the dedication and deep care that our moderators have put into the community. I will be pausing the server so that I can make the necessary changes needed to properly moderate in a way that will not negatively impact community discussions or our moderation team. I want to be clear, this is not me nor Framework censoring your discussions. I encourage you to continue to have these discussions on our forum and Reddit. Thank you for your patience and understanding during this. That's basically a way of saying, yeah, we kind of effed up here, and even moderation isn't agreeing with us, so instead of getting my ass handed to me, I'm just not going to allow you to post on this Discord. That's what it comes down to. And Framework is basically playing themselves. It's that DJ Khaled, congratulations, you just played yourself. It also does explain the volunteer Framework server moderation team going on hiatus. Moderating becomes a whole different beast when your community is made to overlap with another community of an explicitly far-right led project. In other words, moderation becomes hell if you need to start filtering out crypto fash trying to start shit, as opposed to normal everyday people problems you'd normally deal with. Checking the server logs, the DHH problem has been brought up many times by this point. So what does this imply? The above as below in my personal observations and others' observations boiled down in a hopefully accessible form. Here's what I feel comfortable saying about the implications of the Framework Omarchy DHH situation, helped by my background. Sadly, I see this as a net negative for the project. I have to agree with that sentiment. I've read through the, by now, 900 plus messages. Good God, go get some therapy. That's gonna be a mental detriment to anyone. 900 plus messages about this. Feel so bad for any mod. This shit is a nightmare. Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is why, if you even go into my own Discord server, a Matrix server, I try my best to allow for different points of view, but I also am very clear on there are certain points I will not condone this discussion anymore. You know, you can go back. You can even, like, look around, like, the, you know, a few incidents that have happened, and we've had discussions around current events, but generally we stick to political discussions in that server that center around technology. So, like, discussions about privacy rights, security laws, things like that, you know, the UK Online Safety Act, generally seems to focus around there and not everyday politics, but once in a while we talk about the cultural issues around different open source projects like this. Yeah, as a mod in other servers, yeah, it is draining. Yeah, I try to do my best to tell everyone, like, look, be nice or get the hell out. We're not allowed, you know, to have bigoted views inside the server. You know, just be excellent to each other, and you'll be fine. As I like to tell people in the server, and you can literally read in one of the rules here. Oop, hit the wrong button. That was my Yubico authenticator. If you look in my rules... Wait, why am I... My Discord is not wanting to load right now. Fun. Hold on. I know what's happening. I was doing some testing earlier and I messed up my networking. Aha! Congratulations, I played myself. Alright, let's see. Does that load? There we go. Okay. Okay. But like I was talking about in the rules, pretty simple rules over here, but even keep political discussions to a minimum unless directly related to technology. However, even a political discussion, remember to be respectful, and if you can't agree, then agree to disagree. And that's the sentiment that I pretty much have with a lot of different things over there, as well as, you know, no offensive names, and, you know, be respectful, yada yada yada, the usual jazz. And then, like, to cement it even further, if anyone is ever part of my, Mastodon server. Where's that article? There we go. I actually have even further rules on my Mastodon server for everyone that joins my server, and they're pretty much a list of, you know, common sense rules. Let me see, about... Here we are. Pretty straightforward. No hate speech, no bigotry, no shilling of, you know, BS cryptocurrencies, but joke coins is allowed. No NSFW content has to be, you know, tagged. Financial advice is permissible if you're legally certified. Civil discourse, content creator support, respect for privacy. You know, there's quite a few rules in here. It's basically just your, you know, pretty common sense. Don't promote self-harm, all that kind of stuff. Pretty simple. Alright. And I think I accidentally just wiped my server chat. That's fun. Well, I mean the, stream chat. So I have to, like, reopen my Chromium I have over here. Because the plugin I use is on Chromium. Really? There we go. See you later, Vampire. Have a good night. Your thoughts on TikTok new owner has ties to Trump's son-in-law? Yeah, it's the same guy that owns Paramount, if I recall. So it's a problem regardless. So yeah. Okay, hold on. But yeah, overall, the framework controversy around Omarchy is something that definitely they needed to consult with PR over and see, like, hey, this was probably not a good idea. You're not gone, I have a, social stream chat over here. Let me see, make sure. Yeah, there we go. Okay, it's working again. So, yeah, that's the long and short of the Omarchy controversy that's been going on lately. If any of you have been wondering what's the controversy going on with framework and all that, yeah. See you later, Sawfix. Have a good night. But yeah, let's go into some other videos I definitely wanted to, look up. Well, Red Fang had out, but, hold on. Is my audio... Hold on. Probably helps if I have the video brought up. So there's a video that Vampire wanted me to check out from YouTube. Let me make sure the audio's piping through to the second PC. Imgur is now blocked in the UK. Not just the main site, but every image hosted. Wait, Imgur is blocked in the UK? VPN. That includes memes on Reddit, image quizzes on Sporkle, and entire archives of screenshots, guides, and galleries. And this is all because Imgur has chosen not to comply with the UK's Online Safety Act, specifically the age verification. Haven't seen you post on Red now in a while. I eventually will. It's just country smaller than Texas. They've simply packed up their servers. I'm so spread thin as it is. The UK's Online Safety Act requires age verification on websites that may contain adult content. In practice, that means that if your site hosts anything potentially unsuitable for children, be that nudity, swear words, or, let's be honest, anything fun, you're expected to collect and verify ID. And okay, so Imgur is definitely an issue that could potentially have that. Upload anything falls under that scope. Rather than attempt to scan the passport of every single user in Britain, they blocked the UK off entirely. And whilst that might sound like a petty protest, it's actually a rational business decision. Why would an American company completely rework their infrastructure and legal compliance for a I totally agree with that. Increasingly authoritarian market? What's worse is how silent this has all been. There's been no government press release, no alert when you try to load an image, just a label telling you that the content isn't available in your region anymore. And because Imgur is so widely embedded in Reddit, gaming forums, fan wikis, personal blogs, hobbyist communities, this isn't about just one website. Right. Entire swathes of the entire internet are now broken in the UK. This is feature creep in real time. What started as protecting kids from porn has become removing image hosting websites from public view. And I told you this was going to happen. It wasn't just going to be about adult content. Do what Imgur just did. Refuse to comply. Block UK users if necessary. Force the government to answer to the economic, creative and cultural cost of trying to wall off the internet from reality. Because if no one resists, the UK internet becomes a North Korea community of sanitized, state-approved sludge. We need companies with actual weight. YouTube, Reddit, Google, to actually start pulling levers, making noise, breaking the silence, and only then will the government take this seriously. The internet is not your child, and it's not the government's job to parent your child either. Trying to legalise morality through firewall and form fields only creates a fragmented, broken web where everyone loses. So if you're in the UK and you're wondering why the internet feels increasingly grey and censored, just know that this isn't a bug, it's the feature, and Imgur is just the beginning. Yep. I've been saying for a while, this is only going to be worse for the internet as a whole. As we go down into the UK Online Safety Act censoring more and more. Alright, so Pardon my eating, I didn't really have dinner. But I got some really good jerk chicken. Look at that. Look at that. You want to move to Spain? I want to move to Portugal. But if the chat control passes, I think the vote's tomorrow, I wouldn't want to be in the EU anymore. Look at that jerk chicken. Look at that. That looks good. That's some good soul food right there. I got some yams, collard greens with turkey, and jerk chicken on rice. But let us check out this news over here. Intel changes stance on open source LibrePhone project. Linux Weekly News.
Everyone, and welcome back to the Linux and Open Source News Show. This week, we've got Intel, unfortunately, reconsidering their open source policy and deciding to focus their open source efforts on stuff that only benefits them, which is not really the open source ethos. We also have the release of Ubuntu 25.10 and a new interesting, well, sort of vague project called the LibrePhone to try and finally crack open that smartphone market with open source software. And of course, we also have
LibrePhone is going to be so confusing with the Librem phone.
A bunch of stuff on the EU chat control law, on the Cyber Resiliency Act.
Okay, so he's going to be talking about chat control too.
Down on online accounts and more. And we also have this sponsor to our segue. This sponsor to our segue. Sorry, I'm keeping this one in. So this video is sponsored by TuxCare, and you probably know about them if you're a regular watcher of this channel. They offer solutions to automate the maintenance and security of your open source stack.
They're pretty good at offering. I was looking at them for a few clients in the past.
Enterprise support for Alma Linux and Rocky Linux, and they have endless lifecycle support that delivers long-term patching for end-of-life versions of Linux distros, open source apps, runtimes, and libraries. And speaking of which, they now offer endless lifecycle support for OpenJDK, specifically for versions 1.7.0, 1.8.0, 11, and 17. This means you can stick to the version of OpenJDK you currently use and still receive security updates for as long as you need without costly code rewrites and while staying compliant with your own regulatory and audit obligations. This either gives you time to prepare a migration to a newer version of OpenJDK,
you shouldn't stick on old versions too long,
or you can just stick with what works without upgrading without any time limit. These end-of-life versions of OpenJDK also
although you pay for the support.
Enterprise Linux, CentOS, Alma Linux, Rocky Linux, Oracle Linux, Debian, and Ubuntu. And TuxCare just so happens to offer that same endless support for end-of-life versions of Red Hat, Ubuntu, CentOS Stream, Oracle Linux, and tons of open source tools like .NET, Spring, AngularJS, PHP, Python, and a lot more. So as always, check out TuxCare's endless lifecycle support by clicking the link in the description. So, apparently Intel is reconsidering their position on open source. They've had some mass layoffs happening this year with many Intel projects left without maintainers and many drivers for Linux being abandoned as well. The latest in that long list is Kan Liang, a longtime Intel Linux engineer who worked on networking performance and performance monitoring, who is no longer at Intel. But on top of that,
did not know that.
Leadership made some statements during their Intel Tech Tour Arizona that left a lot of the open source community baffled. They say that they need to find a balance on where they use their open source software as an advantage to Intel, and not let everyone else take it and run with it. Which, said like that, is pretty opposed to the ethos of open source.
Open source benefits everyone, including you.
Of their open source contributions, and that they're going to continue contributing, but only where it gives them an edge against everyone else. So basically, the way I see it, it feels like Intel only wants to have open source software where they could benefit from contributions from the community, but they don't want to open source anything anymore where they know either the community won't really help them or that could be used by their competitors as well. And that is at odds with their track record. They've been a pretty good citizen on Linux, and with their tools, frameworks, and libraries, they've open sourced most of what let their CPU
Intel network cards were famously Linux compatible.
People take advantage of those hardware features. Intel wrote another statement after the coverage of these initial statements started popping up, saying that they do remain deeply committed to open source, but that they are sharpening their focus on where and how they
You mean only when it
contribute, which
helps
is basically
directly help
doubling
your
down on what they
pocketbook.
said. Now, it is a bit worrying. Intel is not really doing great right now, and as always, when a company starts plummeting, executives look at the work they're doing. Executives generally don't know much about open source, so all they see is, why are we giving away our code to everyone else? And that's where they start cutting corners.
Yeah, because most of these executives ain't done shit in tech.
Intel accumulated over the years is
Those who can't do, manage. Just remember that.
they were a very good open source citizens. If you take a look, for example, at NVIDIA and AMD in terms of GPUs, for a long time, NVIDIA was the best choice. Price for performance, they just beat AMD soundly for multiple years. But on Linux, most people still use AMD devices, not just on the desktop, but also on server farms and on data centers. Unless you really needed CUDA,
NVIDIA on a laptop.
AMD was a good open source citizen meant that the support was better, and if you encountered any problem or anything you needed to upgrade or work with, you could do it yourself or ask them or ask the community or sponsors.
I do agree with that.
Something you could
AMD
not do
is
with
better
NVIDIA.
on Linux
Meaning
in terms of support,
technically
but
people think
NVIDIA
that
works
it's
fine too.
inferior product, but because their open source contributions were so good, people preferred working with that. If Intel shuts the door on open source, they might also shut the door on a lot of Linux usage, and that doesn't sound good at all. Now this week,
especially when they're a big part of the server community.
I already made a video about it on the channel. You can go check it out if you want all the details. But basically, it is GNOME 49, still on that Frankenstein model where they don't ship certain features like the donations banner or GNOME calendar being stuck on an older version. But they also improved.
I can't wait till we move on from GNOME.
Like their Yahoo theme. They removed the startup apps utility and use some settings instead, which does lose you some features, which isn't great. They replaced initramfs tools by Dracut. They replaced the GNU core utils with Rust-based versions. They replaced sudo. Well, they ship sudo Rust as well as a replacement for sudo if you want that. They replaced.
So what AMD GPUs in my system? In my Parrot OS laptop, it's a Ryzen 7 5700U. And the mini PC for my ham computer, same CPU, which I have to set up. In my new Tuxedo laptop, it has a Ryzen 7 8845HS, which I forget which GPU is inside of all of those. But it can use that, and I often am using the AMD GPU most of the time instead of the NVIDIA GPU for power savings. It works just fine. Excuse me. I primarily use NVIDIA on my laptop when I'm doing video editing on the go because of H.265 encoding. And I now have an NVIDIA 4000 series on that laptop, so eventually I want to standardize on AV1 encoding for my streams and everything, because I'm still doing H.264. But I have to upgrade this GPU over here from a 3050 to at least a 5050, or a 4050 technically. But I'm probably going to swing a 5070 if I can, so that way I can have dual NVENC encoders. But we'll see where I go with that.
Network time protocol utility as well, and they ship a bunch of new applications like Loop being now in the default selection, Ptixis being the new default terminal, and you get the kernel 6.17, the latest versions of the Mesa drivers, the NVIDIA drivers, and also...
Do you need dual encoders?
System. Do you also lose access to the
want? Yes.
session in GNOME, but that's a GNOME change, not necessarily specifically an Ubuntu one. They just went along with it. Now, apparently, there's also an issue with Flatpaks not working at all currently.
Wait, what?
On 25.10, you can install Flatpak itself. It's not pre-installed, obviously, but app installs through Flatpak will fail because of an app armor profile error. It just lacks the required permissions to function properly. The fix is marked as critical, so it will be fixed, and you can disable the app armor profile in the meantime.
Give me Flatpak or give me death.
For Flatpak apps. Now, if you want all the details on the GNOME version, you can check out my video on the channel. And as usual, if you are upgrading in place, it's always worth it to wait.
Did y'all see Unraid added Wi-Fi Nix?
Just to make sure
I did not. I haven't used Unraid in a long time.
Version of Ubuntu, but it does make some structural changes which might affect people more than usual. So do some double checking before you upgrade, or at least test it on a live USB. Now, the Free Software Foundation celebrated its 40th birthday over the weekend. again, which itself is of no real consequence, but they took the opportunity through their newly elected president, Ian Kelling, to announce the Libre Phone initiative. This is a new project from the Free Software Foundation to try and increase software freedom on smartphones, which is cool because I talked exactly about that same topic in this week's Patreon cast for YouTube members and Patreons.
Hold up. Why has the Free Software Foundation not been on a Libre phone idea for like all these years? We've had like people trying to make pure Linux phones for a while. I remember Firefox was trying to make a phone. I remember Purism tried to make a phone. You had Pine64 make the Pine phone. They should have been like on this earlier on, is all I'm saying.
I recorded it before I learned about this Libre phone thing, so that just slotted in nicely. The goal seems to be to create a fully free and open platform for smartphones from the firmware to the OS itself, and I would assume the default apps as well. We already have plenty of open interfaces, as in plenty of UI, but none really work on a fully open system. Generally, the firmware isn't open, or the underlying system is sort of based on Android, like Ubuntu Touch often is, with some proprietary blobs. So this project could be cool if it ends up going anywhere. Now, details are pretty limited right now. We don't know if it's going to be Linux-based or something else. We don't know which UI it will use, or if they're gonna try and write a brand new one.
They're gonna try to make the GNU herd kernel work, so it'll work in like 30, 40 years.
Interface, and you'll be able to pick the one you want with specific distros. We don't really know. It might not go anywhere. It is a big thing to tackle, but if it succeeds, that would be really cool, because I'm getting really tired with those lockdown Android and iOS systems that do everything.
I'm tired of it too.
Restrict your
I'm tired of the Android open source project getting wrenches thrown into it.
Now, companies and organizations keep warning against the EU's chat control law. If you don't know, the European Commission, under the guise of child safety, is trying to implement a way to scan all EU citizens' messages, which would
like malware.
Mean all messaging platforms will have to open a backdoor into their encryption services, which is terrible for cybersecurity, but is also a big privacy invasion that could open the door to way worse uses of that scanning. Once you start scanning for any reason, you can decide to scan for political opinions or sexual orientations, religious tendencies, whatever else you could use to discriminate against certain groups of people. Signal specifically is warning against it this time, but they're the latest in a long line of companies and organizations to do so. They think
Signal's actually been talking about this for years,
saying that the idea a device could scan content before it's encrypted negates the purpose of encryption. Signal said that they would leave the EU if this law goes into effect, rather than weakening their...
Yeah, they said that a few years ago when they first tried doing this.
Germany decided to side against that EU chat control law. They were one of the
few times you may see a Jewish person praising Germany's actions.
deciding factors on whether this extremely problematic and invasive law would be passed, and they now chose to oppose it. As they say, it would be like opening all letters as a precautionary measure just to see if there's anything illegal in them. They say it's not acceptable,
great way to put it,
and that they won't allow it. Since the law requires a blocking minority to be rejected, the parliament needs 4 countries at least that oppose this regulation, and these countries must represent at least 35% of the EU's population. Germany represents apparently 19% of the EU's population alone.
So you're halfway there, pretty much.
The Netherlands and Poland, who also oppose the law, this should be enough to block it. So that's why this was an awful first step towards mass surveillance of EU citizens, so it being sort of blocked is good. It probably also would have resulted in a lot of companies just stopping their services in the EU because they wouldn't have wanted to weaken their privacy measures or their encryption measures. So that's really, really nice. These sort of laws are going to keep popping up again and again because some people really want to read what you have to say on every topic. But fortunately for now, it seems to be pushed back. Now, Elementary OS got some nice monthly updates to share with the first stable release of their own Maps application. This is an evolution of an app called Atlas, and it's now ported to GTK 4, and it is now an official application for Elementary OS. It lets you search for places and go to your current location. It doesn't seem to do directions right now. It is a very simple app, probably meant more as a way to open map links into a dedicated application than a replacement to visiting Google Maps or something else.
That's what I was going to ask, but who's the source for the maps?
Ratings, where these ratings are available on app pages. So you'll see, for example, 62%, which means 62% of users gave a positive rating. App pages have a more compact layout as well, and licensing details
I like this layout
on those pages. When a game in the App Center supports controllers, you'll also get that same information underneath the screenshot with a nice little icon, and application add-ons are also now supported in that same App Center. Updates should also be faster thanks to a massive rewrite of that backend code, and the installed applications view now shows
I can play with Elementary OS more.
Update instead of alphabetically. All such results will also use a 2-column view if space permits it. They also updated their dock to support background applications. This is the same feature that GNOME has in its quick settings menu, and you now get a little folder showing these background apps running in the Elementary OS dock.
That's nice.
Cool. You can click on a little red icon to force quit them from there. The login and lock screen can now support automatic accent colors and dark mode, and your transparency and power settings are also carried over to that login and lock screen. Now that's for what Elementary OS users got this month, which is a lot.
Yeah, that does sound like a lot of updates.
Will have better translucency with background blur, and the same goes for notifications. And you'll be able to disable those settings if you don't like the look. Fingerprint support is also coming in the user settings, which is very nice, and the Wayland session has now been promoted to the default in daily builds because it's pretty much ready. That's a pretty big number of changes out there, and Elementary OS seems to be catching up to at least the level of GNOME. I know it's not for everyone, I know some people don't like the look or don't like the limited feature set, but I still think it is a very cohesive and nice experience. And
I'm liking where Elementary is going though.
That many updates is pretty reassuring. There's another potential reason to quit Microsoft and move to Linux. Microsoft is doubling down on their online account.
Oh, I heard about this.
To run Windows 11. Now, Windows 11 already asked you to sign up or to sign into a Microsoft account. You could no longer create a local account, and that's been the case for a while, but there was a way to bypass that using a little command line and the registry, even though I'm sure most people who use Windows just didn't think there was a way to escape that. Microsoft is now removing the mechanism.
Now, what I'm curious about, okay, is everyone talks about this terminal command. How I've actually been doing, getting around having to make a Microsoft account on my stuff, is I have always had the professional, or actually the enterprise version of Windows, but this works for professional too. And then when I go to set it up, I set it up to, do authentication through Active Directory, which then bypasses the Microsoft account stuff. Now, I haven't had to install Windows in a couple of years. I don't know if that's still the case. But I'm curious, chat, if that is still the case. Let me know.
That allow for a local account in their installer. The reason they give is pretty much bullshit. It's that sometimes if you did that, it could skip critical setup screens, resulting
They're not critical.
Configured, but I don't think that is true at all. The only thing these mechanisms bypassed was the fact that you were or were not connected to the internet.
Yup.
And if you had zero access to the internet, you could create a local account. So the only thing you could skip is internet configuration, which is not a problem if you're plugged into Ethernet, because that's automatic even on Windows, or configuring a Wi-Fi network, which you can do yourself on your own desktop once you're logged in. I use this trick to install many Windows 11 VMs, and
Okay, we're gonna pause for a sec. So how do you get an enterprise key? So my enterprise key is from Windows 7 Enterprise. So back when I worked with an MSP, they allowed us when we worked at there to use the key for our own personal devices, so long as we weren't sharing it. They know I still have that key and I still use it, but I use it only on like 2 or 3 devices, as well as VMs. So you can buy an enterprise key. They're not cheap to get, because now what Microsoft is doing is wanting you to buy enterprise licenses and then pay per in the store, but Windows 7, 7, 8, and 10 enterprise keys are grandfathered in. Enterprise needs Pro keys now, I believe. Yeah, I think so. But my 7 key is grandfathered, so it's never given me an issue.
Who broke anything? Now this is at least being tested by Microsoft. The removal of these registry entries is not published to Windows 11 yet, and it would only affect new installs, but that's still a lot of installs. Any new PC being sold would basically force their buyer to create an account now. Surprised by this move, Microsoft has been trying to force people into using a Microsoft account for the longest time. They want to link everything you do in Edge with your browsing data, all the telemetry, and all the stuff that you entered into that account to your account so that they can just sell that data or access to that data.
It's all about that your data is the most profitable thing.
They make a lot of money.
Hopefully, they make more money than they do by selling Windows operating systems.
Okay, and they will ditch Windows. I'm perfectly aware not everyone is able to ditch Windows, but a lot of people could and aren't, so maybe this will push more people over the edge. Who knows?
Yeah, do it!
Now, something that made me...
Like, I'm just gonna say straight up, for a lot of the people that are out there like, well, you know, I go to Linux, but I only have this one game that only works on Windows. I've said it before in like every stream to those people. Find another game. There's tens of thousands of other games you can go enjoy. And if you're literally holding yourself back and basically staying in an abusive relationship that is Microsoft just because of that one game, I don't know what to tell you. Because if you start voting with your wallet by going to Linux, doing all your gaming on Linux, and saying you're not going to game unless it works on Linux, well, developers eventually will switch over, and they have been. They've been taking notice. I mean, they want to sell their games, and a lot of people buy these Steam Decks, and they want their games to work. They don't want to, have to go through the rigmarole of installing Windows on a Steam Deck and have that subpar experience. They want to actually have their device work as they want and get away from Windows. So I will die on this hill and say, pick another game if your issue to keep you from moving from Windows is because of a game. Now, if you're in a business setting and you have a line of business software that does need to run on Windows, totally different argument. I can understand why you're staying. I can understand why the engineers are still using AutoCAD and SolidWorks. You're actually using it for your career, and you need that to make money. In the same way, I will not hate on users that still need to use Photoshop. As much as we hate Adobe, it is an essential tool for a lot of people who are graphic designers. I get it. But, for the video editors out there that are like, I'm using a DaVinci Resolve, it works on Linux. You're starting to see more people that are able to shift to Linux and do all their things. But if you're just the average everyday user, and your only holdaway from you switching over to Linux is because that one game has a kernel-level anti-cheat that doesn't work on Linux, I would say ditch that game, find one of the other tens of thousands of games that works on Linux. Y'all have been seeing me play Borderlands 4 since the first day it came out, Path of Exile 2 since the day it came out. I have played Doom, Dark Ages when it came out, all of these games on Linux, with almost no issue. And the issues I had were the same issues Windows users were complaining about. Like Borderlands 4 being horribly optimized. That's the same issue people on Windows have been complaining about. We also have federal contracts. We're basically tied to Windows permanently. Not actually really the case. You can use Linux in federal contracts. I've seen it. I've supported customers that did it. Now, are there certain tools that you happen to use that may rely on Windows? Yes. I'm not arguing in that point. But there's a lot of infrastructure I've seen running on Linux in terms of government. And the government themselves uses a lot of Linux in the back end. I know this because I have friends that are also in the military and tell me all the systems they're dealing with. And from my understanding, some of my friends can't really give me too many specifics, but they say there are actual desktops in certain secure areas that aren't Windows. And the main reason why it's being pushed as Windows is Microsoft has a very big lobbying arm. But once you get outside the USA, you're seeing a lot of governments move away from the Microsoft gospel. One of my managers asked if we could switch to Linux. I laughed and cried, then laughed again. I mean, it depends on your line of business software. I know in my everyday work at work, I could totally switch to Linux because I'm really using Windows Subsystem for Linux for all of my work as it is. I've got Visual Studio Code. I just need to make my Microsoft Office work. But I could easily tie Thunderbird into, Outlook and get that working with an extension that I do. I could easily, do all these different things. I get it. You can even get Teams to work on Linux. I've done it. But I also understand for the average everyday person that may not always be the case. You may have line of business softwares that may only be designed to run on Windows. But yeah. Engineering, AutoCAD, VBA, C#, and F#. Well, Visual Basic is just, kind of asking, why do you hate yourself? AutoCAD, I can understand, only working on Windows for now. But also, as more shops start leaning towards Linux, I would not be surprised if AutoCAD releases a Linux version in the same way that DaVinci Resolve has released a Linux version.
Firefox got some accolades, getting a special mention from Time magazine for having one of the best inventions of 2025. Now, if you're wondering, what is that special invention?
Wait, Firefox?
Shaking your smartphone with the Firefox app open to summarize an article. Yes,
Wait, what?
That's the invention. You shake your phone and you get an AI summary of the article you're currently viewing. According to Time magazine, this is worth a special mention in the best.
According to Time magazine, the bar is in hell for inventions of the year.
Inventions list. An invention that only works on iOS and only for English users.
Oh my god!
Although on that special mentions list, they also include.
It's a top invention of 2025 and it only works on iOS. Like the bar is in absolute hell, Time magazine.
Using your smartwatch as a mouse, as a super cool invention, a small electric razor, a Polaroid camera, a phone with a big camera, some...
Hold on. A Polaroid camera. In 2025. A Polaroid camera. In 2025. I'm going to repeat that again. Time magazine, inventions of 2025, included a Polaroid camera in 2025. The Polaroid, that was already an old technology when I was born. The bar is in hell. As far as what is an invention that is worthy of accolades from Time magazine. What?
That lets you see how clothes fit instead of, going and trying them out.
Hold up. Shopping assistants. AI outfit pickers. Like, look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's pretty much dealing with AI. No, 2 of these are AI. 2 of these are virtual reality to try on clothes, wow. And then you got shoes. Really, Time magazine. The bar is in hell.
Or, I kid you not, there is a spoon that shocks your tongue to replace the taste of salt. Now,
what the hell? Hold up. Did he just say that?
Or, I kid you not, there is a spoon that shocks your tongue to replace the taste of salt. Now,
Kieran's electric spoon simulates the taste of umami by gently shocking your tongue, lessening the amount of actual amounts of salt needed in dishes and enhancing the taste of low-sodium foods. The line of tableware devices now features cups in addition to spoons. What? What's wrong with just, I don't know, taking a little bit of salt? Nah, we're going to turn everyone into Uncle Fester from the Addams Family, and we're just going to shock you in your mouth. I am waiting for that to go wrong. Because it's like a little shock. What happens if that gives you like the full battery? Like, what has it got, like a AAA in there? And then suddenly you're like, oh, it tingles. Ow!
At least Firefox is getting a profile manager. This has been in the works for a while and it's finally coming to all users in days. You'll be able to create multiple profiles with their own bookmarks, history, extensions, and themes, and they're all
I'd like this.
Privacy.
Because you know how nice it would be for me to open up my streams and have a separate profile in Firefox for my stream needs with its own history and settings and all of that? That'd be great.
There's no data linked to these profiles.
It also is unlikely for the spoon to actually shock.
It's a good feature that most other browsers.
What happens if that resistor gets shorted?
It's nice to see it coming to Firefox as well. Now, I know I've been harsh on all these invention things, but it really doesn't feel like any of that serves any purpose. It's just to do something we've known how to do for years in a less convenient way and with technology added where technology wasn't really needed. I don't know, it just feels like bling for the sake of bling. But hopefully this mention puts Firefox back into some people's radar. Maybe it helps getting some little tiny bit of market share back. I don't know, it just feels like a very pointless feature. Now, something I missed at the end of last month, that's about the Cyber Resiliency Act in the EU. This thing raised a lot of questions when it was introduced, specifically for open source projects, because it was expected to add a lot of admin burden on the shoulders of open source.
I think I remember a little bit about this.
It would force developers to take responsibility for vulnerabilities, to document and maintain everything that they fixed or didn't fix, and also document their entire software supply chain, their focus on security. Everything would have to be fully documented and accessible. This would be difficult to accomplish for a lot of open source projects that just have one volunteer or two maintainers, and it would also mean big companies could become wary of using open source software to build their own stuff, because it would place that admin burden.
Good idea, bad execution.
It's hard enough to document all your own code, but if you also have to do it with all the false code that you plug into your own infrastructure that you didn't produce yourself, it gets impossible. But Greg Coe-Hartman, who is Linus's number 2 on the Linux kernel, gave a talk at the end of September talking about this, and he seems to think it's all going to be fine. First, he says that companies, yes, they will have to document their open source dependencies, which is good, because it means we can know what open source software
that part
is
is
used
good.
And
I do
who
agree with
breaks
that.
the licenses. Second, he says that individual volunteers don't really have to worry that they're not liable for anything as long as the software they make isn't sold or monetized. If a software project is monetized,
that's the key.
Only the organization that manages that is liable to all these duties and admin work, not the individuals themselves. Although in a lot of cases, the individual is...
So like the Mozilla Foundation, but not individual Firefox contributors. Great.
It's not huge if you already follow good development practices in terms of documentation. The security focus of all this regulation will also, according to Greg, push companies to use actively supported projects, or at least to stick to mainstream code and to the communities around them, because these communities would handle lot of that paperwork and documentation burden, where a fork or a small project likely would not be able or not be willing to do all of that work. As per making companies wary of open source to avoid being held liable for code they didn't write, Greg thinks that this will not happen. He actually says it might be the opposite, since companies will control their code base more with open source than if they relied on proprietary software, because they actually have the option to contribute or to fix stuff or to help, where they would be fully dependent on the software vendor to get the work done if they paid for proprietary software instead. He concludes by saying he talked to representatives in the EU that created this law. He says that they understand open source and that they don't want to see it harmed at all. Now that's certainly reassuring. I would think Greg Coe-Hartman is a trusty source On this, if he says that this will not affect projects too much, I tend to believe him,
Yeah.
but also there might be a bias here. Greg works mostly on the Linux kernel, and that is a gigantic project, maybe the biggest software project out there. So maybe his vision is biased towards that size instead of just seeing like the volunteer developer monetizing
That's a fair
their app
point.
through Patreon, getting like $10 per month, and having to document a lot of stuff on their free time, which takes away time from the code. We'll see if this actually is a problem or not, but I do tend to trust Greg Cole-Hartman on this. I think if there was something super fishy or difficult, he would have spoken up against that. And I'll personally speak up in favor of our sponsor, Tuxedo Computers. You all know about
Yep,
Tuxedo.
I use
by now.
Tuxedo.
They're
good.
only manufacturer I use daily. All the stuff that you see from me is run on one of their computers, and all my gaming.
Look, I like Tuxedo Computers. We're not cutting that ad short, but, you know, you've heard me talk about them enough being good. So, yeah. Alright, let's watch a couple other videos here. One of them is a funny video. But apparently iPhones are going to have age verification according to, let's see what they have here. iPhones, Apple, and Google in general now have ID verification. California and Texas have passed age check laws that require parental consent for a user under 18 to download apps off the store. Alright.
Age verification is spreading, and it's spreading fast. So the California Governor Gavin Newsom on Monday, which is today, actually just required a law for device makers like Apple and Google to check users' ages online. As we all know, Google has already been pushing age verification through YouTube. Do it through Google Play in California. And it is not just the state of California doing this, it is spreading all across the US and will most likely spread all across the world. Major tech firms were buying into this, including Google, Meta, OpenAI, and Snap. So yeah, basically a lot of the major tech firms just folded and they're like, all right, fine, we'll just go ahead and listen to you guys. Utah and Texas are passing a bunch of age verification laws as well, and they're still talking about protecting the kids. But for California, the good news is this actually doesn't
somebody
require
think
any
of the
sort ID.
children!
The parents themselves just put the age into Apple or Google or whatever. I don't think this applies to Utah and Texas, though. I believe you do have to provide a photo ID or government ID or whatever over there. So in California, the parents are going to be inputting the kids' ages when setting up a smartphone, tablet, or laptop, and then they require device makers like Apple and Google to group users into one of 4 age brackets. Device makers must make the information available to apps like Facebook and Instagram, and app developers must request ages for their users. Motion Picture Association, which represents major film studios including Amazon and Netflix, had urged Newsom to reject Wick's bill, claiming device-based age checks create confusion when parents and kids use separate streaming profiles under one account. This was a big problem.
That is a good argument.
On YouTube too. What if you share a YouTube account with your parents and they watch a bunch of adult-type videos and you watch Cocomelon? What are they going to determine your account to be? So that's actually a pretty legitimate criticism from
A lot of adults actually don't know YouTube Kids exists. So I know a lot of adults that actually have watched a lot of kid content for their kid from their personal account. So that's a problem. Because they've actually, like... Because if you have a YouTube Kids account, it's locked down to kids' content for the most part. There's things that do bleed over and all that. But I've seen it where they're watching Cocomelon, and then like a few videos in, they're watching stuff that is way too adult for them.
Picture Association. But the person who made the law, however, argued her measure doesn't prevent parents from creating kid-friendly streaming profiles. Wicks also previously said that she would work with the MPA and Netflix next year to explore new legislation addressing their concerns. As for Texas, it's a lot more strict than California. And by the way, before I read this, I know a lot of you guys are thinking, oh, it's cool. I don't live in California. I don't live in Texas or Utah. We're good. It's not going to affect me. Well, the majority of us didn't live in the UK, and the UK is where all this age verification thing started, so don't be surprised if it spreads to wherever you live as well. But yeah, starting next year, Texas will require companies like Apple and Google to verify the ages of people that use their app stores.
I think there's 21 states now that require
starting January
you to verify
1st,
seeing adult content in various
trying to
ways.
make a new Apple account must confirm if they are over 18, and any users under 18 must join a family sharing group. Parents and guardians will also be required to give their consent for users under 18 to download apps or to make in-app purchases. So let that sink in. If you are under 18 in Texas, pretty soon you're going to need your parents' permission to download an app from the App Store.
I need to play devil's advocate here for a second. There are situations where a kid needs to have accounts separate from parents. Like, think about kids that are in abusive households. If they can't download applications to allow them to seek safe shelter, that can put kids, especially those in minority groups, LGBTQ, whatever, you name it, in potentially risky situations. This is one of those situations, I think, good intentions, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And I understand where people are like, we should have, more guardrails. And I'm like, maybe you should be a better parent and learn how the technology works that you give your kid. Instead, you're like, the kid's just bothering me so much, I just throw my iPhone at them. And that's why we have a whole generation of kids that don't know how to creatively function, because you've thrown a screen in front of them instead of actually dealing with the kid and nurturing their mind.
That is insane. Developers will also have to make changes to comply with the law. Apple already offers a declared age range API that developers can implement to ask users their general age, and the API will be updated in the coming months to provide the required age categories for new accounts users in Texas, Apple says. Apple is also launching new APIs later this year that will enable developers, when they determine a significant change is made to their app, to invoke a system experience to allow the user to request that parental consent be reobtained. So basically, if your app changes to be more mature or whatever, it might be something where you need to get parental consent more than once. Utah and Louisiana have passed similar laws, and Apple says that similar requirements will come into effect later next year. Google has also shared guidance about how it will support Google Play developers ahead of the age verification laws going into effect. Apple apparently has pushed back on this specific law, with CEO Tim Cook calling Texas Governor Greg Abbott to try and get changes to Texas SB 2420 bill. While we share the goal of strengthening kids' online safety, we are concerned that SB 2420 impacts the privacy of users by requiring the collection of sensitive, personally identifiable information to download any app, even if a user simply wants to check the weather or sports scores.
Yep, that's an issue.
Totally agree. I mean, basically what they're saying is, hey, you need to go ahead and provide us some sort of photo ID for age verification if you want to download apps on Apple. I don't know, though. I don't remember anybody's data getting leaked for having to provide ID verification to use an app. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, a few days ago, for those of you guys that don't know,
Discord T-app, there was that app conservatives were using to try to cancel the people that were, celebrating Charlie Kirk, being unalived. That they got their IDs leaked from that. It's been a problem.
Discord got hacked. Discord is pretty much the biggest voice communication service out there, and they confirmed that 70,000 government IDs have been exposed in their breach, and hackers are posting people's age verification selfies.
There's a third party of Discord. It wasn't Discord themselves.
I'm really glad that Discord is requiring
Discord information was access that they were using with third parties.
Keep their services very, very strict and safe, so nobody's IDs have been breached and their privacy hasn't been breached. Oh, just kidding. Now those hackers have access to tens of thousands of people's age, name, everything, and they just expect us to hand over this type of information, and they're like, oh, don't worry, just trust us, we'll keep your stuff safe. Yes, I understand it's not their fault that they got hacked, and I know that any website or service can get hacked, but the idea of you guys having our government information to begin with is concerning, because you guys can get hacked at any time. I don't give a shit if my Discord gets hacked and they get my password.
Yeah, like I said, it wasn't Discord that got compromised. It was a third party they happen to be using.
Uploaded on Discord, yeah, that's gonna really suck, because now they're gonna know me and they can sell my information, and I'll be pretty much screwed. I can get my identity stolen. So I don't think these guys actually understand why we hesitate so much to hand over our government IDs. If this type of stuff was foolproof and you could give us a guarantee that our information will be safe, I'm sure a lot of people would be more willing to hand over their ID. But even then, people just don't like other people to have information about them, and I'm definitely one of those people. So when these states constantly have the balls,
I fall into both categories.
Oh, yeah, just go ahead and hand over your ID. Don't worry, we'll keep that stuff safe. I don't think they understand how foolish they look when their stuff ends up getting hacked. And remember, Discord, like I said, is one of the biggest voice communication services out there, if not the biggest right now. So I'm sure they have great security. I'm sure they were very difficult to hack, but it doesn't matter if people.
Discord wasn't hacked. It was a third party.
IDs,
it wasn't Discord's fault.
It's a gold mine. If somebody wants to hack.
If you're going to go around saying stuff like this, and this is why I got so upset in the past few streams when people are like, did you talk about the Discord hack? And I'm like, no, Discord wasn't hacked per se. A third party they were using that they had data on was compromised, but Discord itself was not compromised. These little things matter a whole lot when trying to keep from spreading misinformation. I know I sound a little bit miffed, but it's because I'm tired of correcting this point. We need to know the difference between when Discord themselves were compromised, their infrastructure was compromised, or a vendor they were using was compromised. Like the T-app, that app that women were using to apparently find red flag men and do discussions and all that. They got compromised themselves. They weren't even compromised. Their S3 buckets weren't secured, and all you had to do was find where the S3 buckets were, and then you could download everything. That is a clear example of they got compromised. Well, it wasn't really compromised again. It was just they were exposed. They just didn't realize it. Discord going through and having a third party get compromised is not Discord being compromised. It's data that Discord had on a third party got compromised. So I know I've repeated myself and I beat this dead horse, but I'm sorry, it irks me so much when people don't get these things right. And I know it seems like I'm being petty, but these little details matter a whole lot because people wrongfully think Discord and their all information was compromised, and I'm like, it's only a very small set of people. Now, Discord itself is not a very secure medium. You should not be sending sensitive information over it, which is why I've been telling everyone, either do it in person, or at the very least, settle for end-to-end encryption, like Signal, Matrix with encrypted chats, iMessage is even, an okay medium. Although you have issues with if your backups aren't encrypted themselves, with advanced data protection, that's a whole other thing. But anyway, continue on.
Discord, and they have everybody's government IDs. They're gonna be like, oh, dude, I can just get all the IDs and sell all that stuff. I do like that Apple is at least a little apprehensive to follow this law, but I know that they're gonna essentially have to. So I really, really hope that more lawmakers look at this type of stuff and be like, well, hey, we shouldn't have to give over our government ID though. Say what you want about California, but at least in their age verification law, they're not requiring you to hand over an ID. They just require your parents to put your age in for you. I mean,
okay, that isn't so bad.
Forced to hand over a government ID, or you just lose all your services on whatever you're using. I mean, that's really where the outrage is to begin with. I think we all agree that we would like the internet to be safer for kids. Everyone understands that. But the reason why all the comments, and I'm sure my comments right now will be filled with people saying it was never for the kids, is because we understand that when you're asking us to hand over an ID, all you guys want is our information. It has nothing to do with protecting
kids. But most of these politicians don't know jack about the modern internet.
Not these services. It's us.
They don't consult with us experts.
All of our information. And like this article points out, I mean, that was the most controversial part of UK's age gating rules. All the California government lawmaker is saying is for parents to input their kids' ages when setting up a smartphone. I mean, that seems fair enough to me. Don't force us to hand over an ID, though.
That's not too bad. Okay.
On the internet.
You know what? I'm just going to put my age as 21 on all the apps. That way I can feel younger again. It won't regrow my hair, but at least it makes me feel better inside.
I certainly don't want it to be with things like Discord or the T-app. Do you guys remember the T-app? That was that app where like women can go...
Hey, he mentioned the T-app. I brought that up earlier.
For like how good they are to date or whatever. But to require that everybody on the app is women or whatever, they like required IDs or something like that. And bam, it got hacked and now all their information is public. It's just crazy, man, that they don't understand why we are hesitant to give over our information. So I'm glad that at least the California lawmakers, like I said, say what you want about them, at least they're going ahead and respecting the fact that we shouldn't be forced to hand over our ID. Hopefully more people look at how California did it and they can look to implement something similar like that, because at the end of the day, nobody anywhere wants to hand over an ID to anything, especially not to things that you can just get frivolously hacked like the T-app or Discord and all that type of stuff. But yeah, let me know what your guys' thoughts on the situation in the comments. So age verification is just spreading rapidly. Have you been hit by age verification on YouTube? Did your Discord get hacked or were you part of the data breach? Let me know in the comments below. And also, guys, I've gotten a bunch of...
Yep. I mean, you heard that. Oh, and we're going to watch a funny video right now. I do this every so often. If y'all are not familiar, this is one of my all-time favorite politicians. He's called Vermin Supreme. Why Vermin Supreme? Because all politicians are vermin, and he is the supreme one. He is the friendly fascist that you can trust. He believes in a pony-based economy. And here we are, going to watch him. So enjoy.
Opening 2 minutes to Mr. Vermin Supreme.
Thank you.
Wait, why do I got no audio? Yeah, he wears a boot on his head. Hold on. I think I gotta unplug and plug my thing in.
Gingivitis.
Opening 2 minutes to Mr. Vermin Supreme.
Thank you. Gingivitis has been eroding the gum line of this great nation long enough and must be stopped. For too long, this country has been suffering a great moral and moral decay in spirit and in ciders. A country's future depends on its ability to bite back. We can no longer be a nation indentured. Our very salivation is at stake. Together, we must brace ourselves. As we cross over to the bridge work, into the 23rd century,
Dental puns!
let's bite the bullet, and together make America a sea of shining smiles from sea to shiny sea. Now, friends, some people will tell you that this mandatory toothbrushing law is about the secret dental police kicking down your door at 3 a.m. to make sure you've brushed. Friends, it is not. Some will mention the dental re-education centers or the preventative dental maintenance detention facilities. It's about none of these things. It's not about the government-issued toothpaste containing an addictive yet harmless substance. No, friends, it is not even about DNA gene splicing to create a race of winged monkeys to act as tooth fairies. Friends, what this mandatory toothbrushing law is really about is strong teeth for a strong America. My name is Vermin Supreme. I am a friendly fascist. I am a tyrant that you should trust, and you should let me run your life, because I do know what is best for you. Yes, I am a politician. I will promise you anything your little electorate heart desires, because you are my constituents. You are the informed voting public, and because I have no intention of keeping any promise that I make. Vote early, vote often. Remember, a vote for Vermin Supreme is a vote completely thrown away. I would like to take this moment to acknowledge my mother, who is in the audience here today. Please stand up, Mother. Please stand up. If you can stand up, please stand up. She's going to try and stand up so you can acknowledge her. This is my mother. There we go. And 5 years ago this April, I gave her a kidney. My challenge to you people, everybody on the stage and everybody in the audience, give up a kidney.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Supreme.
Mr. Supreme, welcome back.
Thank you, sir.
Like some of the other candidates, including former Governor Romney, this is not your, shall we say, first rodeo.
Let us say that.
This is not the first time you have run for president in the
Correct.
New Hampshire primary. And President Romney has been accused, and I'm not taking a position one way or the other, of taking different positions on different issues. I'm asking you right now, do you still stand by your pledge made in 2008 to provide a pony for every American?
Yes, I do, sir. Free ponies for all Americans, one of the overlooked issues in America today. My free pony platform is, of course, a jobs creation program. It will create lots and lots of jobs. Once we switch over to a pony-based economy, we'll also lower our dependence on foreign oil. We'll also be able to turn all that pony poop into methane gas and wonderful compost, so we'll be able to up our soil that is being depleted by agrochemicals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, of course, the important thing to realize is that it is a federal pony identification program where you will need your pony with you at all times. Thank you very much.
Mr. Supreme, I wanted to follow up on Ambassador Shoemaker's question
Yes.
regarding the ponies.
Yes.
Is that the only government entitlement program that you support? What other entitlement programs are you for?
Just that one. That's enough. But in the vein of energy production, I'd also like to address my harnessing the awesome power of zombies for energy sources. It's not just to run away from anymore. No, we have giant turbines that we're working on, and we will have lots of zombies, and we'll just sort of dangle brains in front of them, and then they will turn the giant turbines, creating energy to lessen the dependence on foreign oil in America here today. Thank you.
Mr. Supreme, your 30-second closing statement, please.
My name is Vermin. My name is Vermin. Vermin Supreme. My name is Vermin. My name is Vermin. My name is Vermin. Vermin. Vermin Supreme. And you can vote. And you can vote. And you can vote for me for president if you want to. And my name is Vermin. And okay. Thanks very much for coming out today. Oh, one more thing. Jesus told me to make Randall Terry gay with magic sprinkle dust.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Supreme.
Okay, so you gotta get the context of what happened.
All right.
He's turning gay.
All right.
That was a very anti-LGBT person, and like somebody else apparently ran over and like threw sprinkle dust on them like a while ago. Yeah, I love Vermin Supreme. I actually knew a guy that actually had him stay on their couch. He's been like my favorite political candidate for like, I think like 20 years or so now. He's been doing this for like so many years. But yeah, that was a great video. And I will always play that video every few months because he is the epitome of what all politicians should be. All right. Let's get one last video for the night. All right, so we have this video came up. One of my other friends was recommending that I look at it, talking about the end of Xbox is officially here. Apparently, they were pulling all stock and trying to go all digital. And what I was told, this may be in relation to the Game Pass retaliation people were having because of the price hike, where they went from $20 for the Ultimate Game Pass to $30, and I'll be up front here, as I've talked about in many other streams, if you haven't been here before, I have never really been a fan of Microsoft Game Pass, or Microsoft as a whole. Yes, I did have an Xbox at one point in time, but I was seeing the writing on the wall that Microsoft was going to do their old dirty tricks, where they were actually going to do Embrace, Extend, Extinguish, and lo and behold, they are doing just that. They are buying game studios, they are shutting them down, they are laying off people, the quality of games has gone down, and they're basically consolidating so that you have to be reliant on them, and then people won't be able to own games. You know the old adage of, you will own nothing and you will be happy. Let's go into that.
Trust companies, especially ones the size of Xbox, they made a lot of promises when they acquired Activision Blizzard, saying we're not going to be laying people off, we're not going to be canceling games, we're not going to be raising prices of our services, and the lie detector has now determined that that is a lie. But we have heard conflicting reports over the past couple of weeks. Some say that they are planning to basically not make another full Xbox console, or the next one will be the last. Some are saying their plans are going to be physical long term, but now we're finding out that multiple retailers are pulling Xbox stock from store shelves as they must be panicking over Game Pass cancellation figures. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, over the past couple of weeks, Xbox has made a lot of really terrible decisions, and the major one people are talking about is the Game Pass price hikes. People are very upset with that.
Right.
And we saw tons of people
$30 a month for Game Pass is ridiculous.
Of them canceling their subscriptions, and I do think that Xbox is panicking, and it seems that a lot of their plans might be changing behind the scenes, but we have just found out that Target and Walmart have seemingly pulled Xbox stock from store shelves. So last month, one of the largest retailers in the world, Costco, confirmed that it would no longer be selling Xbox consoles. Now, several other vendors may be following suit. According to Reddit users who claim to work at Target and Walmart,
Costco's no longer selling Xbox consoles. Say what?
both stores have begun
They're really pulling them off the shelves?
En masse. On Wednesday, the Target I work for has removed all Xbox games, and I'm pretty sure it will be store-wide. All the games have been discontinued and will likely go on clearance. My local Target is getting rid of their Xbox section, another user posted, attaching photo evidence. The electronics manager says they will no longer carry systems, games, or accessories.
This is ridiculous to me. Like, what the hell happened, you know? That was part of the experience. Going in the store, Getting annoyed by some little screechy kid while you're going to buy your Xbox and get your accessories and your games. No longer going to have the... But then again, it's kind of been a downhill experience since electronic boutiques has kind of been gone. And the fact that, like, collector edition games don't really have any swag anymore. Like, the last game I remember to actually have, like, some cool swag was Elder Scrolls V, when I got the Alduin Dragon, and I still have that. Like, don't you remember? We used to spend $100 for collector's editions or so, and you get like the chief helmet from Halo. You get all these little cool things, and now you pay like all this money for a digital copy of things to get digital in-game items that when the game goes away, you no longer have the thing. Games have no longer really become the experience that they once were. It was this whole thing where you used to like buy the game, you'd get immersed into it. Like, hell, like, I remember, we'll get back to the video in a second, but, like, I remember, do I have it around here? It should be around here, somewhere. Well, I have, like, my Elder Scrolls 3, like, game guide, and, like, it was, like, this whole experience of when you had Elder Scrolls 3, and getting into, like, the whole, like, lore of it, and the manuals, and the artwork, and everything, and now it just feels like every time we have a new game release, it's just a slop. Like, Borderlands 4 is unoptimized crap compared to Borderlands 1 through 3. Game studios don't take chances anymore. They just want to rehash IPs for a quick buck to grab. I mean, how many years have we had Grand Theft Auto 5? How many releases of Grand Theft Auto we had? Or, you know, how many times does Elder Scrolls 5 have to be released, re-released and all that? Until they're like, hey, yeah, we can't re-release Elder Scrolls 5 again. So you know what we should do? Elder Scrolls 4 re-release. Okay, Elder Scrolls 4 re-release wasn't too bad, because it's not been re-released multiple times. Give me an Elder Scrolls 3 re-release, though. That'd be great. But, yeah. They stopped matching Amazon 2 months ago. Really? Target is likely to get rid of all of its tech section entirely soon. Jesus. To be fair, I've never really gone to Target for the tech because I got Micro Center, so I'm spoiled there. But yeah, never played GTA, but I really want to play GTA 6 simply because of the suspense. I don't know how I'll feel about it. I don't know if I'll play GTA 6. And I'm also weary about Elder Scrolls 6 because Bethesda has been really screwing up games like Starfield. Starfield was a complete letdown. I will give credit, they actually tried releasing a whole new IP, but if you notice, like Fallout, they have to re-release that. They're basically living on old lore and rehashing old games.
Also said all Targets in Kansas City's area are purging Xbox stock as well. The Walmart store I work for is getting rid of Xbox games too, another commented. We are doing a store remodel now, and the new layout for electronics will have no Xbox games, and Switch and PlayStation will be condensed to one lock case each in the year.
Hold up! One lock case? I'm sorry I'm pausing so much, but that just baffles me. Like, I remember Nintendo 64. It was a wall. A glorious wall of Nintendo 64 games. And you had a glorious wall of your PlayStation games, your Sega Dreamcast, and all of that. Now you're one freaking case. The entire experience of getting your console and game is gone now. Now it's, oh, we're just gonna wait until it gets delivered. And then we're gonna plug the game into the internet and download it.
So I've been in the electronics here. I can count on one hand.
Target always made it hard to return. That's why I have Micro Center.
Xbox game. Now, obviously, we know that these companies all want to go digital. They see digital only as the future. It's why I personally buy physical as much as possible to try to fight back against this. And I know there are a lot of people out there who do the same exact thing. I would rather buy a physical good and have it taking up space and cluttering a room than having something that is only digital and a purchase that could be completely ripped away from me.
Yeah, I want to rebuild my physical game collection. I lost a lot in the flood.
Truth of the situation we face right now is that It seems that all of these companies are headed in this direction because, of course, it's much cheaper. They don't have to pay for production, storage, shipping, and it's just easier for them, and they make more money. But I still think that there are a lot of people out there who would rather buy physical and go out of their way to do so. And it's just so sad to see that it's so hard to do at this point. And it seems that Xbox is going to be the first to abandon physical games. And don't forget that
Well, let's remember, Xbox years ago, sorry to pause again, Xbox was the company that got hated on when they tried to do the whole, like, we're not going to be allowing you to share games approach of things. Do you remember when Sony roasted them? I think that was that PlayStation 3 or PlayStation 4, where Sony literally said, here's how you share games on PlayStation. And it's literally one guy with a disc, handing it to his friend, and then goes, thank you. And Microsoft had to pull back from that idea.
a few months
Microsoft
ago,
does not realize they are in a
that
bad
Xbox
position.
was seemingly no longer selling physical discs for their big games, and they had silently gone all digital. Release dates for The Outer Worlds 2 and Ninja Gaiden 4 were revealed during Sunday's big Xbox game showcase, and pre-orders had gone up for those wanting to snag their copies early. Unfortunately, it seems as though large retailers such as Best Buy aren't actually taking pre-orders for standard physical copies. There are physical Xbox pre-orders for deluxe editions of The Outer Worlds 2 and Ninja Gaiden 4, but these are literally just download codes in boxes and don't include a disc. Meanwhile, both games are getting standard physical editions on PS5, suggesting that Xbox is just about done selling its games on physical discs, and we know that they are facing a hell of a lot of backlash right now because of the Game Pass Ultimate price rises, and I've talked about this in a couple of different videos, but they added more day one games and threw in Fortnite Crew and Ubisoft Plus Classics to help justify the cost, and that's not what gamers wanted. But now that we're finding out that they're seemingly pulling Xbox stock from store shelves and they're really pushing towards just an all-digital future, they don't really care
Embrace,
about
extend, extinguish. That's Microsoft's
They don't even really care
MO.
about selling anything in stores anymore. Yeah, a lot of gamers are not taking this news very well. There's some people that are extremely upset over this. There are a lot of people that are memeing and calling out Microsoft's bullshit lies. Mike Ybarra said, "Your console is dead." That's sad, but hilarious. People didn't want to believe when I said Microsoft isn't afraid to pull the plug on its products when they are not profitable. Remember the Zune, the Windows Phone?
Yep,
They
I remember
are
that.
Definitely not
The
willing
Zune wasn't a bad
to
device.
lose a lot of money long.
They just didn't
term
market
to a
it
certain
well.
extent
Same with
because
the
we know that
Windows Phone.
Consoles haven't made the money
Remember,
that
this is
they
the Linux guy saying that.
but the games have, so it's kind of balanced it out. This kind of thing in retail is all about space and how much that space pushes sale per hour. If the big dogs say it's not viable, then it makes sense to open up the space and fill it with even more PlayStation options, or maybe even expand their PC offerings, but we know that that's not the case given all of these people have said the PlayStation and Nintendo sections are also being condensed.
Today's shopping
The
feels like
higher-ups at
store in
Xbox are
prison.
digital
Yeah.
liars. This was last year. Xbox chief Phil Spencer says Microsoft isn't giving up on physical media just yet. Getting rid of physical is not a strategic thing, he said in an interview. But of course, you can't trust any of these people. They're all filthy liars, and it's not even just Phil Spencer's fault because he has higher-ups that he has to report to at Microsoft. So he still does need to do ultimately what they want,
Yeah.
but at the same time, a big reason
Well, straight up, if Microsoft is not going to, let you get physical media, then what's the point of, buying an Xbox really anymore? Because I would rather give my money to Valve. At least I know they're not going to dick me over like Microsoft, given their history. Whereas Microsoft has a history of literally being taken to court so many times for dicking over consumers and vendors. Do you hoard data on your drives locally? I have a NAS for that. Blu-ray player device? Well, if they get away from physical media, what's the point in the Xbox having a physical drive? And I want to pose this question as well. How many people do you know actually play Blu-ray discs? I want you to actually think about the totality of people that many of you know and how many of them actually play Blu-ray discs. Exactly. You know, like 3 people. I can count on one hand the number of people I know that actually watch physical Blu-ray discs.
Why people trusted
See, they're
them
getting
was
effed.
because
No one
the
effs their
FTC was
customers
going
better than
after them
Microsoft.
for the Activision Blizzard purchase. They made a lot of promises that clearly they didn't ever intend to keep. And some people are actually going to buy their next-gen console, better off getting the Ouya.
What's an Ouya?
The Intellivision Amico's doing. Microsoft has a chance to turn this around after the horrible Xbox One reveal, but nope, they listened to the fanboys who damage control everything, plus the shields who kept saying Game Pass was the best deal in gaming. I personally thought the Game Pass was an extremely good deal when it was a lower price, but now that it's significantly higher, it's not worth it. And you also have to consider the price increases that they've been going through.
The first game streaming device? Yeah.
They are trying to get the prices of their games raised to $80. They tried that with Outer Worlds 2, and that was a complete and utter disaster. I think that was a terrible decision, trying to make that game your first $80 title. You have to do that with something that's really got the value, and Outer Worlds 2 certainly isn't that. It's facing major backlash, and to top all that off, it's not even pre-ordering that strongly, but they are trying to increase their profits, and it's clearly not working the way they wanted. Nothing new here in the UK. Most gaming stock was pulled from stores years ago, along with DVDs, Blu-rays, and CDs. They stopped paying for retail space. It's being delisted here in Norway too. Such a weird move as we're getting closer to December and Christmas. Yeah, you'd think that they would want to do one final major marketing push for their consoles.
Yeah, I would have thought they'd wait until New Year's at least.
If they put a lot of money into it, how much they could truly raise in stores.
It was an actual Android device.
Not their plan anymore. And it is sad to see this happening because it raises a lot of questions and worries about video game preservation and how scummy these companies really are going to get. Of course, we know that they are pushing age verification, which a lot of people are unhappy with. For years, we've dealt with games not really being on the disc, and then they tried to pull selling.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
That just had a digital download code in it, which is also a terrible look. But I'll be
why is Microsoft mischievous villains?
To see if they make
They've always been.
I highly doubt that they are going to.
That's why I use Linux, among other reasons.
In general, everything basically is going to be pulled from every major box store. Then they'd have to say, well, this is like the end of an era. Only time will tell. But they are facing some major backlash right now from basically everybody. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this important and informative, make sure to give it a like. And if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.
Yeah, so, look, I've been saying for a long time, and people didn't want to believe me for even longer than I was making content. Which I still can't believe. I've been making content for a few years now, since, the pandemic era. But I was saying for a long time, you shouldn't really be trusting Microsoft. Microsoft will dick you over. They've historically done the embrace, extend, extinguish mentality. This has been proven by the Department of Justice since, what was it? They were in 2001, 2003, somewhere around there, with the United States Department of Justice going after them, uncovering in their own documents what they described as embrace, extend, extinguish. They embrace a technology, they extend its capabilities, then they extinguish the product or the competition around it to so make you reliant upon the Microsoft solution of said product. Look at what Microsoft is doing to Windows. Look at what they're doing to Xbox and the entire gaming world. They gave us this whole BS of, no, we're going to need to acquire Activision so that we can keep prices lower and, we won't lay off people and, we can keep the quality of games. They laid people off. They've been shutting down studios. The pricing of games is going up. Honestly, I don't think it's going to happen during the Trump administration, but the next administration coming in should have the Department of Justice review the merger between Activision and Microsoft and start splitting things up. Same with Google. Google needs to be split up as well, because Google's monopoly is also forcing the Android open source project to get mothballed and have wrenches thrown into it that Graphene OS, Calyx OS, Lineage OS, and all these other ones are getting boned. .NET and TypeScript are both either outliers or extremely long cons. They are horrible. They are horrible. But look, there's a reason why. And people did not understand for years when I told them Valve investing in Linux and gaming on Linux is the best move they could have ever done. Because look at what Microsoft was doing. They were requiring you to buy games online in their store. Why would they do this? Well, there was growing communities also to emulate games on Xbox on PC. They didn't want to lose out on that profitability and force you to be locked into the Microsoft ecosystem from both Windows and Xbox. They wanted you to be stuck there so they could siphon as much money out of you as possible and get you trapped. Whereas Valve, at least, they're investing in Linux. They're investing in Proton. And Proton is open source to the point I can use Proton on non-Valve games. Like, if I'm using Lutris, if I'm using Heroic Launcher, I can install Proton in the back end there to play Rocket League on Heroic Launcher. I can use Proton to launch Tribes 2 inside of Lutris or any other game. I can use GOG, Amazon Games in Heroic Launcher using Proton. Why is Mac allowed to ban sideloading of Linux or Windows? That's a hardware thing. That's not a software thing. And you can install Linux on a Mac. There's Asahi Linux. And I think Linus Torvalds is famous for using Asahi Linux on a Mac for his Linux dev. But all in all, this is why I keep telling a lot of gamers, like, if you want to preserve gaming, you need to move away from Microsoft. You need to embrace Valve, the Steam Deck, Linux on a desktop, gaming on there. Oh no, this one game doesn't work because of kernel level anti-cheat. Make a comment to the developer and let them know you're not going to buy the game because it doesn't work on Linux, and then go find another game. There's tens of thousands of other games out there. You've seen me pull up my Steam library. I've got, like, I don't know how many games I've gotten here, and they all work on Linux pretty much. Or they at least all did at one point. Because, like, I had Apex Legends in here that worked on Linux until they EA. I have 226 games in here. I have 226 games on my Steam library over here. And almost every single one of them can be played on Linux right now. Look at that. 226 games. And some of these are, you know, pretty popular titles. You've had, like, ones from back in the day, like BioShock series. You've got, of course, Age of Empires. I mean, they're apparently Albion Online. Black Myth Wukong. I was playing that. Day Zero worked on Linux, no problem. Cyberpunk 2077 worked Day Zero on Linux. I got Dark Souls over here. I still have not played that, but I have friends that have played that on Linux. Deus Ex. You've got the old Diablos. Well, that's Diablo 4, the new Diablo. That worked Day Zero. Got the entire Doom series here. From the original Doom, well, not that Doom. This Doom, the original Doom, all the way up to the latest Dooms. Doom Eternal, Doom Dark Ages, works on Linux. Elden Ring, apparently works on Linux. Another game I still gotta play, but I got friends that play it. Guess what? On Linux. Elder Scrolls, Linux. Fallout, on Linux. Far Cry. Like, all these games here, like, we have, this MMO, The First Descendant, that was pretty fun. Final Fantasy Windows Edition 15. Worked on Linux. Okay, Gundam Evolution didn't work because of a stupid kernel level anti-cheat, but that's, you know, again, developers being derpy. All the Valve games work. Halo Master Chief Collection, Helldivers 2. Like, you can just go through this entire list here and see pretty much 98% of all the games here still work on Linux. And that's why it blows my mind. Did you play the beta version of Doom 3? What do you mean beta version? I've been playing Doom 3 since I was a kid. Doom 3 was out when I was in middle school, high school. That's what... Okay, Doom 3 has nostalgia vibes for me. Some people hate me for saying this. Doom 3 is my favorite Doom. It is. I love that Doom. It's great. I love the vibe. Everything about it. It was just a great, feel for me and a good nostalgia play to remember that. That and Quake 4. But yeah, like, gaming on Linux is really the only way that I really can see how we're going to preserve gaming, in the future for everyone. Because if we allow Microsoft to retain the monopoly that they do, both on Xbox and on Windows, it's not going to be good for anyone. You're already seeing how Windows 11 game developers are getting incentivized to do very unethical things with your Windows operating system, because now people are requiring you to play on Windows 11, even more so with the stupid kernel level anti-cheat, with the trusted platform module and secure boot enabled. And now video game developers like Epic Games, I think it was it Epic? I think they were talking about how they want to have IOMMU requirements on your games. If you don't know what that is, go look it up. We use it in virtual machines all the time to extend, to connect directly into the hardware a little bit better. And that makes sense in a virtual machine kind of thing, but a game shouldn't have to call upon these things. LOL, back when I heard Windows drama. Yeah, Windows is a big pain in the ass. I can understand why people professionally still need to use Windows because they're actually making money from their software. But gamers that are out here playing video games, I want to play this one game, and it's the reason why I need Windows. No, you don't. You don't need to play that game. You can go play another game. Put your money where your mouth is. Tell that developer you stop playing the game because it doesn't support on Linux, and you're going to go play another game. Don't think multiplayer creators have a choice. They have to raise the bar to reduce cheat. They do have a choice. There's tons of multiplayer games that do not have anti-cheats. Kernel level anti-cheats. And here's the thing. Kernel level anti-cheat doesn't work. There's ways to get around it with directed memory access where literally there are cheaters that are attaching pieces of hardware into their computer to make it look like a network card or something to hook into the memory directly. That's why they're called DMA, direct memory access. And then they're using another computer, like a little PC like this, to hook into that device they have so that it's reading directly from the memory from another computer to do the cheating for them. You're never going to catch all the cheaters, and a lot of times kernel level anti-cheat doesn't even work right. You now have issues where Battlefield 6 and Valorant can't be installed in the same machine at the same time because the anti-cheats conflict with each other. And a kernel level anti-cheat doesn't just run when your game's running, it runs when your computer boots, and there's many cases where when you uninstall the game, it doesn't actually remove the anti-cheat. And anti-cheats have actually been, kernel level anti-cheats, have been used as part of attack chains to compromise systems. Genshin Impact's anti-cheat was seen for years as vulnerable, and the developers did nothing about it. And then somebody co-opted the Genshin Impact kernel level anti-cheat as part of an attack chain to disable antivirus. And let me make this very clear, because people don't seem to understand this, and they're like, well, I don't play Genshin Impact, so that's not a problem. No, they were using the anti-cheat as part of the attack chain separate from the game, meaning as part of the payload, the anti-cheat was delivered to disable the antivirus. Didn't need the game. I've actually come around to the point of view where I used to be saying security software is the only software that I believe should have kernel level access. And after a few talks that I've seen, there was actually this Dr. Louis DeWeaver when I was at GurCon recently, and I talked to him for about an hour and a half. He changed my point of view to go from only security software should have kernel level access to no software should have kernel level access, except things that actually need to run the machine. And why is that? He made a great analogy. I mean, it's a little bit absurd. It's a little bit funny the way he puts it, but he's like, imagine if you are ill and you go to your doctor, and you tell your doctor, I need you to help me figure out what's wrong with me. And he's like, okay, I'm gonna need access to your wife any time of the day that I actually need her, for any reason. That's about what kernel level anti-cheat really is basically like. What reason does your doctor need to have access to your wife at any time of the day for any reason to figure out what's wrong with you? Sounds absurd, but that's basically how it is. Mac OS is like that now. Yeah. Now, on Linux, there could be the argument made for multi-kernel approaches. Now, there is this idea being floated around. There's a couple of organizations, one of them being ByteDance, that actually proposed multi-kernel approaches in Linux. And what that means is that in Linux, okay, so like you have virtual machines right now. A virtual machine is like a Russian nesting doll. You have a virtual machine that runs on top of the operating system, or that's type 2. Type 1, I believe it is, that actually can directly interface with the hardware. But either way, it's multiple machines running on a machine. Now, what if you were to change that concept a little bit, and instead you have multiple kernels running on that same operating system? So let's say you have your main kernel, then you need to have some tasks that actually do real-time operations, so you need a real-time kernel. You can have that run at the same time, assign it a certain amount of memory, a certain amount of CPU resources. And then let's say you have another kernel on top of that, and you want to have that just for gaming, and they can assign that to CPU and memory, and that has kernel level access for your anti-cheats. And then it only spins up when you're playing the game, but when you're done, that kernel shuts down. That I could see potentially happening. But as far as kernel level anti-cheat or kernel level access that runs at boot time until shutdown time and is basically a rootkit, nah. Like Cubes OS. No, Cubes OS is a totally different thing. Cubes OS is Zen hypervisor, where everything is a hypervisor. Multi-kernel approaches aren't a hypervisor. You remove the entire hypervisor component, you have multiple kernels running on one system. So imagine if you were at the same time, I could have multiple versions of the same kernel hooking in, or I could have, say, my generic kernel is over here doing most of the tasks, then I assign a couple CPUs and a certain amount of memory to real-time kernel operations, because I need a real-time operating system that a regular kernel can't operate, and then I have another kernel over here that I allow more intimate access into that kernel at any time. That's a multi-kernel approach. Now, this is still a really novel approach to things. It still hasn't been actually fleshed out in reality yet, but that is an approach that is being explored right now. And I think it's a very valid approach for many different applications. MDM is the only thing that I can think of that needs low-level access. You don't even need MDM. Mobile device management? Mobile device management can actually run outside of the operating system. Potentially. I may be over simplifying things, but you have, like, what is it, the Intel management engine at the enterprise level, where you can do out-of-band management? Yeah, there's that. MDM, like... But the MDM, when you think of, like, Mac, it's actually hooking into systems built into Mac and using the profile. On Windows, it would be using Intune, which is built into the system. On Linux, it's hooked in various different ways. So it's segmented? Yeah, pretty much. So, like, currently with a virtual... It's like a virtual machine, but not. So a virtual machine is an entirely encapsulated operating system. Like its own Russian nesting doll, basically, thing. But you have an entire computer inside your computer. That's a virtual machine. Remove the entirety of needing a whole other computer. You still have all your other system resources. And all you've done is run another computer operating system kernel at the same time. So you have your main Linux kernel, then let's say you have another kernel that's even more hardened. Or, I'm just throwing this out here because this is just all hypothetical at this point. You could have a Linux kernel and maybe a FreeBSD kernel running on the same system, accessing the same resources. But they're not a virtual machine. That's a multi-kernel approach. And that is one of the ideas that's being floated around right now. And ByteDance was actually one of the companies to propose this. We talked about this a few streams ago. I heard Mac uses a similar framework as Linux. Well, it's because Mac is Unix-like. Mac was based on Mach and Darwin kernels, if I recall. It's Unix-like. So they're cousins of each other. They're both POSIX compliant. If you understand the Unix-like framework, you know, from a Linux side, you can get into each other really easily using the terminal. But where Mac gets really weird and wonky is their packaging and how they do things. The way Mac does things makes no sense to me. It really doesn't, and I say that as a former Mac user. It is a pain to manage compared to a Linux system. Like, everybody says, like, Linux is so difficult. The honest truth is, if you take away the base knowledge that you have of knowing Windows or of knowing Mac, pretend you know nothing and you are a blank slate right now, Linux is actually easier to understand. Linux and FreeBSD, they are both easier to understand than Mac and Windows. And you can learn much more about both of those operating systems because Mac and Windows, as I like to professionally say, hide up all of their stuff behind magic blue smoke. Magic voodoo blue smoke. Where we just have to pretend the box there has this magic blue smoke, and if you let the smoke out, it breaks. There's so many things in Mac and Windows that are not documented, that there's limited knowledge on, and people are still discovering hidden features inside of Mac and Windows. Whereas on Linux, yeah, you can spend an entire lifetime on it, but there's documentation up the wazoo for everything. Thank you for the follow, Bork Me Daddy. Lies, I've seen System D. That's magic blue smoke. Well, System D is merely a suite of softwares that happens to include a boot manager. And look, I used to be on the bandwagon of hating on System D many years ago when it first came out. I've actually come around to liking it. Like, just recently, I was doing some migrations because some of our systems are running on Amazon Linux 2. And Amazon Linux 2 is end of life in June. And we've been moving to Amazon Linux 2023, which is still supported for like another 3 years or so. Well, Amazon Linux 2, you run cron jobs for scheduling. Amazon Linux 2023, we have to use systemd timers. And at first I was like, what the hell? This is some bull. And then I started playing with systemd timers and I'm like, okay, I actually like this better. The logging is way better. I now can troubleshoot and do things a little bit better and actually see when things executed and everything. So, like, I've come around to appreciating systemd. I still will joke about, you know, eventually it's going to include an operating, it's going to include an office suite and stuff like that, but I digress. People make animated apps for iOS via hidden timer app handles. Windows just works. In Linux, you have to sudo every little thing. No, you don't. No, you don't. And here's the thing. You still have to use user access control to elevate your access in Windows and click a prompt to give admin access. You still have to give admin access. And if you don't believe that you don't need to sudo everything, most Linux operating systems now have a store included. Have you seen UAC in Windows? LOL, that's sudo in Windows. Exactly. You know, like, let's put it this way. Windows still doesn't have a package manager. Oh, I just installed Linux. Let me go over and we're gonna install Steam. Oh, look at that. I can click install. I already have Steam installed, obviously, but you get the point. Windows has WinGet now. Nobody uses WinGet, and it's still missing a shit ton of things. Like, look at this. I want to install Postman. Look at that. Look at that. I'm installing Postman for API controls. Did I have to do sudo? No. I just clicked a button. Now look at this. Okay, it takes a second. There we go. Look at that! Woo! Didn't have to even do a user elevated prompt. Just installed. Tell me, does Windows make it that easy? They do not. Like hell, you know, you say you want to do the entire updates on Linux, you can just do apt update, apt upgrade, or you can literally just go into the pop shop or whatever shop and then hit update and all that. Well, Steam works with Linux. Well, yeah, they've done an extremely good job with Valve to actually make it work well. Has WinGet and Windows Store. They both suck! Linux has had a package manager since the 90s. I want to make that very clear. Linux has had a package manager since the 1990s. Windows only added a package manager within the past, what? 5, 6, 7 years? Like, let's put it this way. Linux has had the TCP/IP stack in it longer than Windows had. Why did they add TCP/IP to Windows 95? Because Steve Ballmer got annoyed with how many people were bugging him about adding a TCP/IP stack, that he basically was quoted as saying, I don't know what this TCP/IP thing is, but just add it so they can stop bothering me. Because up until Windows 95, you had to install Trumpet to even be able to do basic TCP/IP networking, which is ubiquitous nowadays. They still need to improve dist upgrades. Should be easier to go from Debian 11 to Debian 13. It's still been a problem to do Windows upgrades. Yeah, you can say 10 is very easy to upgrade to 11, but 11 is really just 10 with a reskin. It's not even that radical of an improvement. Going from 8 to 10 was a much bigger jump. Going from 7 to 8 was a much bigger jump. And even with those, you had huge problems. XP to Vista, Vista to 7. Yeah. Most important apps are not it. You have to make it run like executable program. No, you don't. What do you think? Like, in Windows, you still have to install a lot of apps. In Linux, you can literally just grab an app image and then make it run. Like, look at this. I'm gonna run my entire editing software here. So when I run my editing software, I use an app image over here. This is a self-contained executable right here. All right? All I had to do was right-click, allow executing file as a program. And then boom, double-click. And then we got my video editing software. Right there, self-contained. Didn't have to install anything. Oh, Flatpaks are great too, don't get me wrong. TCP/IP implementations on Windows technically is a version of Linux implementation. Well, yeah, because Windows actually hasn't figured out how to do a lot of things, that in order for them to actually be more compatible with a lot of developer workflows, they had to add Windows subsystem for Linux. That was the only way they could be competitive, because the Windows dev in community was not as great. I remember one of my buddies was telling me the issues with like Windows C99. So in 1999, there was a version of C that they wanted to build for, but like C99 was not working in the Windows compilers. And the reason why it was not working in the Windows compilers is because they made the argument of nobody was coding in C99. But the reason why nobody was coding in C99 was because the Windows compiler didn't support C99. But the reason why it didn't support the C99 was, you see the reciprocal knowledge there? Whereas they eventually just said, we're going to use the GNU C compiler to support C99. Like, yeah. Oh, okay, you know, your software didn't support this, cool. Like, Bison. Bison was a software that people used back in the day. I remember the story. And he's like, well, Bison worked in C. I need something to work in C++. So I took Bison, forked the code, and made Bison++. That's actually one of the developers in the Linux community what he did. Microsoft should copy best Linux features. They've already been doing that. They've been doing that for years. The reality is, Microsoft really hasn't had any genuine innovation of their own, I would reckon, pretty much since the DirectX days. I think DirectX was a really great implementation that they actually did back in the day, knowing how there weren't many different graphical APIs. And back then, OpenGL was not really up to snuff. I don't think OpenGL really existed, if I'm not mistaken. But Microsoft hasn't really innovated anything. Like, look at what their big innovations have been for the past few years. Windows Recall. Did anyone really think of Windows Recall? Like, I want you to tell me, has anyone in their life ever thought, wow, Windows Recall, that's a feature Windows should really have? Trezor or Ledger for best privacy? Well, Trezor is completely open source, and I moved entirely to Trezor, so yeah, go with that. You liked Recall. Lies! You sit on a throne of lies! No one likes Recall. Unless you're about 10 shots of whiskey in. Wasn't Recall pure spyware? It just wasn't. It is! It's not wasn't, it is! There is not much really to stop a malicious actor from creating malware that scrapes the data from Windows Recall and then just starts taking your most valuable secrets that way. Because it's not really that secure. It was protected through obscurity, and like you changed an extension, one of my buddies was telling me, and like boom, suddenly it's viewable. Why is Windows allowed peeping? Because Windows is a voyeur and a creep and a perv, okay? Because I kept forgetting made it look like I was covered in this. All the MS development efforts went to building out Azure, their money bag, which is crap. Azure is crap. I'd still rather use AWS. I still would, seriously. AWS is far more capable. Is it expensive? Will it drain your entire wallet out like a succubus? Yes, it will. But it's still better. UK will force Linux to run recall. Not without giving it your ID first! Look into how to sysadmin or something textbook at your local library. Wait, what? Which channel or source material is good for learning Linux and which distro? Well, the honest truth is what I tell people is the best way to learn Linux is to use it. Just like any other software. Now, if you're trying to do it for a work thing, most of the time you're going to end up using Red Hat, maybe Ubuntu, maybe OpenSUSE if you're over in Europe. There's a few different distributions. But yeah, you're gonna have to like kind of play with it, learn it, and I'd recommend even living in it. It's the same way as like learning. The best way to learn a language is to immerse yourself in the country and culture of said language and force yourself to use said language. I definitely will tell you, like, a lot of people are like, well, what book can I use to... Books are a lot of times outdated by the time it's in print for a lot of the things we do in this field. There's a lot of different content creators out there that do all sorts of basic things. I know in my Discord channel, we have a lot of people that help each other out and learn and things like that. Azure messed up one time, so I had 30 virtual machines mining for me a whole month. And that's the story of how he lost his house. The UK should invent their own state-controlled OS. Yeah, I think governments have tried doing that in Europe. I think the UK actually had their own stuff, but it'll suck. Don't get me wrong, the concept of recall is cool, but I don't want something that can snitch on me later. Yeah, that's the problem with any of those kind of softwares. Computers will snitch on you. Computers are little snitches. And snitches get stitches. But yeah, I mean, they could fork Red Star OS. Isn't France going all French software for state stuff? Not really. They've been saying they're doing that for a while, but not really. I mean, they can only dev so much in France. You still have to rely on an international community for all the different components in there. Because it's very hard for any singular country to have all the resources to make one operating system and every component that you need. Every time a government gets involved in OS creation, they can't help themselves, they add backdoors. Yup! That is totally true. Is Hannah Montana Linux still worth it in 2025? Hannah Montana Linux and Bebian, or Justin Bieber Linux, always still worth it. Although it's not modern enough to run on a lot of modern computers now. So you pretty much have to run in a virtual machine. Oh yeah, speaking of virtual machines. Didn't we have Redux OS over here? Yes, we did. Alright, let's see. VM. Alright, let's see. Let's get a new Redux. Alright, VM ISO NAS, Redux. Let's see the hype of this completely Rust-based operating system that isn't Linux. So what distro am I using? I'm using Pop! OS. I think they said they were using a Linux distro and would design the software to run on Linux instead of Linux. Linux instead of Linux? I think you mean instead of Windows. Alright, let's see. Virtual machine. Let's see if we can get this working. Browse. Look at all my images I got over here. Back it up. And let's get Redux. Let's see how this works. Give you a couple CPUs. And we'll give you 2 gigs of memory. Let's give you 4 gigs of memory. I wonder if it'll work. Alright. Okay, you're not doing nicely. I'm curious what it says about Redux on QEMU. Hard drive image, daily images. Image.zst, yada yada yada. So okay, virtual instructions. Yeah, we got that. Okay, it's just enabling a bunch of options. Wait, what? I'll have to play with that. Invent a new idea Linux should immediately adopt. Yes. Okay. I'm gonna have to figure out how to get this working. Trying out Redux. Because this is still like in experimental phase. Alright, let's see. Somebody has the documentation, recipe.sh. Okay, so that's old. I wonder. If I delete that, and then no, it doesn't have an option in there. I'll have to play with trying to get this running. I shall do that another time. Yeah, because I'm gonna have to tinker with that. But yeah. It is getting a little late though, so I think I'm gonna call it a night right now. It was great hanging with all of you. Make sure, if you haven't already, to follow me on all of my socials. I'm on Blue Sky, I'm on Mastodon, I'm on Twitch, Kick, YouTube, TikTok, all those things. And of course, we have the Discord and the Matrix servers. Links are in bio for all of you as well, if you don't see them down in the chat. And I will see you all. Wednesday is the next scheduled stream. So, Wednesday evening. If you're over on Twitch, stick around for the raid. Otherwise, stay safe. I love you all. And happy hacking.